壊れろ。消えろ。潰れろ。弾ける。
A long time ago, in the kingdom of Roland, a young man named Reiner was tasked with collecting the remains of legendary heroes whose mission was to defeat demons and evil gods, and Reiner was facing a group of soldiers from the kingdom of Nilva and using his magical ability against them. The soldiers were surprised that he could use the same type of magic as them, despite being from the kingdom of Roland. They also noticed the alpha mark on his eyes, and despite his appearance, which suggests that he is just a ridiculous and useless bastard, they felt that he is a monster just because he uses the same magic powers as them. Then he found the commander of the soldiers yelling at them not to use magic against him after guessing that he was a spy and that the kingdom of Roland was planning to wage war against the kingdom of Nilva. Ferris interrupted him and told them that a fool like Reiner could not spy on anything because he lacked spy skills. The Nilva soldiers fell in love with her at first sight. Then the commander shouted at them not to be fooled and ordered them to attack. Reiner tried to correct the perception and said that they came to search for the remains of the hero who was in Nilva, but no one listened. To him, and the soldiers began to attack them, and then Ferris was able to break their swords and armor in a flash. So they realized how strong she was, and the commander ordered them to retreat immediately. So Reiner followed them to tell them that they did not intend to start a war with them, but he was surprised by a blow from the hilt of Ferris's sword. Then he found her pointing her blade at his neck and scolding him for forgetting that they were in the middle of a secret operation and no one was supposed to know about them. Reiner felt exhausted by the hard work he was being assigned and was lazily moving his ass behind her. Meanwhile, a girl was watching them from behind the bushes. When they reached the border of neighboring Nilva, Reiner was surprised when Ferris stopped at a nearby shop to eat pancakes during their mission. She told him they were excellent, comparable to those in Roland, and when he told her he didn't care, she smashed his head with the sheath of her sword. Then she said that she was accompanying him as a bodyguard and was not in charge of anything else related to the mission. He felt angry that everything was on his shoulders in addition to being severely beaten by her, and his frustration increased when he realized that he had to cross the high mountains ahead of him to reach the remains of the legendary hero. The shopkeeper interrupted them when she realized they were from Roland. To gain their trust, she told them that she did not hate the people of Roland, as most Nilvians do, and then told them about the war that the Roland kings had fought all over the place. Then she added that the revolution that took place 2 years ago left a new king of Roland, Cyan, who changed things for the better and became influential, in addition to his good looks that made her his biggest fan. Ferris told her that he is just a demon, not a hero, and she should not be fooled by his features, and what makes her call him a ruthless demon is that he can ban pancakes from being sold just to scare her. Reiner expresses his displeasure with him for assigning him so many tedious tasks, even though they are close friends. Meanwhile, King Cyan is greeted with a standing ovation by the people of Roland, who revere him as the reason for the kingdom's development and prosperity since his reign. When Cyan arrived at the palace, he was greeted by his entourage and told them that the situation in Siliwa was very bad due to the damage caused by last year's flood, and he decided to give it a temporary exemption from taxes and then ordered Khan to make a review of the budget. Claw told him not to work too hard and that he should get some rest. He told him that this country was just beginning to change and that everything would be lost if he relaxed his grip. Claw told him that there were many people who had hopes for him. Khan laughed that he was trying to say something profound, then told Cheyenne to try to rely on them more for work and distributed tasks to him and Miller, ignoring Claw, which made him feel like he had a problem with him. When they started arguing with each other, Miller gave Cheyenne a report on the secret mission and told him that Reiner and Ferris were still roaming the borders of the country. On the other side, Reiner and Ferris reached the forest. Then Ferris found a locked door in front of them, and when Reiner examined it, he found that it contained a magical formula that made it difficult to open it. And while he was trying to decipher the magic code, he was surprised by Ferris splitting the door in half and almost cut his head off with this wave. After they went inside, Reiner replaced the traps inside. He was bored with all the traps inside, so Ferris accused him of only wanting to chase women and kidnap young girls. Meanwhile, the mysterious girl and her companions were watching them from afar, but the girl almost slipped and grabbed a rock from the wall, at which point a trap was activated against Reiner and Ferris, at which point Ferris stepped on another rock and a fire appeared between her and Reiner. Ferris immediately rushed to free Reiner from the trap, then realized that something was coming, so she protected herself and let him end up drifting with the violent waves of water. On the other side of the kingdom, there was a boy who intended to attack Count Clawsbear, and when he saw his badge on one of the wagons, he did not hesitate to break into it. But he was surprised when he broke the window that the person inside was Cheyenne. Then Claw threw him away thinking that he was a mercenary, but he was surprised when he found him surrendering after his mission failed and asked him to end his life. When Claw inquired about his mission, he told him that he intended to retrieve his sister after she was kidnapped by Clawsbear this morning. Then he said that he was not strong enough to fight the nobles and that he could not live in this corrupt world without his sister. Shine told him that it was wrong to choose to end his life because he was born in the wrong circumstances and that he would be abandoning his sister forever. He added that he knows that the kingdom is corrupt, but he has a dream to change it for the better and is willing to do anything to do so, and the boy felt the sincerity of his words, which made him gain some confidence. On the other hand, Ferris went to check if Reiner was still alive after he drifted into the depths of the cave, but she was surprised to see the girl watching them unconscious next to him, and when she regained consciousness, she started vomiting water, but soon panicked when she realized that she had been discovered. She decides to tell them everything and tells them that her name is Milk, and she is a secret commander working for the Kingdom of Roland to hunt down the rule breaker, and accuses him of trying to escape after he obtained the kingdom's magic, which is a violation of the law. As she spoke, she found that they had already left her and were already gone. Ignoring what she was talking about, she was furious and used her magic to attack him and put him under heavy guard, but he easily fended her off, and then she realized that he was forced to accompany Ferris at all times, and she begged him to see her. When she begged him to accompany her, Ferris thought she was one of his puppet victims. The two of them denied having a relationship. Milk felt she was being deliberately mocked and decided to use her full power to catch them. Instead of attacking them, Milk destroys the cave from the inside and is surprised when one of her companions, Loki, comes to pick her up quickly and tells them that they must escape before they are buried under the debris. When Reiner examined it, he couldn't recognize its skeleton, but he realized it was one of the remains of the legendary heroes. Then the monster started attacking them and didn't give them a chance to realize what was happening, so they had to run away and Reiner had to run like a coward to avoid its attacks. In the meantime, Sean helped a boy named Fiol get his sister Aslina back in a sign cloth to take him to her. After Clog learned their story, he told Cheyenne that they had been living together since their parents died in the last war. Cheyenne thought that as long as the nobles have power and influence, they will continue to wage wars within the country, and then he felt useless because he could not stop them even though he is the king. Then his thoughts were interrupted by Clawsbear, who came to welcome him and told him that he sent a wildflower to his palace as an expression of gratitude to him, and Cheyenne was pretending to be friendly in front of him even though he knew he was just scum. On the other side, Reiner and Ferris sat thinking of a way to defeat the monster. When he noticed that Ferris was wearing a necklace around her chest, she told him that she got it after they collected the remains in the previous mission. Then they were surprised by a bright light flowing out of her and rose into the sky. Then a thunderous attack fell towards the monster and caused a large part of the land around them to be destroyed. Reiner and Ferris thought that the monster had died from this attack, but Reiner was shocked to see it rise again and rushed after Ferris and continued to run away from it. On the other side, Shine returned to the palace and kept thinking about the way things are in this world and how he always longs for people to suffer loss and death, and that he has to change their lives for the better. Then he remembered in the past when he succeeded in convincing Reiner to join him in order to reach their goal of ruling the empire and seeking development and change, but they ended up losing their first battle after their entire army was wiped out and only they were left. Shine remembered his painful childhood when he was bullied and beaten by the sons of noblemen, and the only one who treated him with love was his mother, who always expressed her pride and gratitude for having a son like him, and then told him before she died that he would definitely find many people who love him. As he lay helpless and beaten, his mother's words echoed in his head. When his little puppy tried to defend him, they killed him. Shine ended up alone. Years later, Shine joined an academy that gathered orphans and criminals to be used as pawns to keep nobles out of the front lines of wars. One day Shine was reading the file on Reiner, known as the greatest magician in the Kingdom of Roland because he carries the mark of Alpha. Then he decided to go to the library to do some research, and when he entered, he found him sleeping as usual. So he wondered that he decided to sleep in the library and did not believe that scum like him is the most powerful magician in the Kingdom of Roland. The next day, all the students were surprised to see Shine in the training yard, while Shine was surprised to see Reiner being beaten up by one of his classmates and ridiculed by all his classmates, and then his classmate Kiefer scolded him for his lack of enthusiasm at all times. Before he could get up, she attacked him again, and he didn't bother to dodge her spell, so she approached him and slapped him while everyone laughed at him and considered him a disgrace to the academy. Then Shine headed towards them after realizing that Reiner blocked her attack at the last moment, but fell down out of sheer laziness. He admired Kiefer's skills and academic excellence and offered her to join his team as they were going to practice a mock battle. Reiner thought he could finally take a nap and get some rest, but Shine told him that he wanted to join the team with her. Kiefer tried to convince him that it would be good for him, as he could get a promotion in the student ranks if he passed the training under Shine, but he was surprised that Shine had invited him in the first place despite knowing his pathetic marks. Shine told him that he wanted to recruit him to his team to utilize his power as an alpha. When Reiner played dumb, Shine told him that he had already done a background check and threatened to expose him if he refused to join his team. The next day, Shine and his team went to fight a mock battle against another team of their teammates and made a plan to attack first. When they found them, Shine didn't hesitate to jump towards them and decided the matter abruptly, while Reiner was surprised by the team's initiative and tripped while jumping. In the evening, they all sat down to celebrate their victory in the battle thanks to Shine's plan and drank until they fell asleep. Reiner didn't care much about it until Shine approached him and was curious about why he joined the academy. He then added that he knew everything about him since he was in Orphanage 307 receiving rigorous training to be used as a tool to be used in war instead of nobles, and asked him if he didn't feel a desire for revenge against this corrupt world. Reiner warns him not to say such things, lest he get into trouble and end up dead, and it's not worth thinking about for him. Shine tells him that he will take care of it, that he intends to become the king of the empire, change the world order, and stop pointless wars, and offers to join his side. Reiner initially refused to join him, and jokingly asked him to make it a law after he is crowned king to give promotions to people who take a lot of naps. Then they were surprised by the appearance of a group of mercenaries behind them, and Shine realized that they were after him and asked Reiner to run away and not get involved in the matter, telling him not to die from such a trivial thing if he aspires to become a king. Shine continued to run away until he reached a dead end and became trapped. When they started attacking him, he remembered that he wanted to be king and did not have to die here and now. That's when he met Ferris for the first time, who stood in front of the mercenaries and told them that she would not allow any criminal behavior in the area. She decided to teach them a lesson for ignoring her warning, and she shocked them and beat them until they decided to run away. And then she told him that he owed her and that he should buy her a plate of her favorite pancakes. The next day, Shine went to buy the pancakes she ordered, and the shopkeeper told him where the Ferris family's house was located. He realized that she belonged to a family known for their mastery of swords, and when he met her, she told him that she had received an order from her brother Lucille to help him for a period of time. When she asked him why he was being targeted, he began to tell her his tragic story, as he belonged to a noble father and a poor mother, and his birth was undesirable to some, so he was forced to live with his mother, separated from his father since he was young. Then he added that hatred began to grow inside him badly because of the harsh conditions he was exposed to, especially after the death of his mother after she was disposed of by some mercenaries sent by one of his half-brothers, and since then he became certain that they are targeting him because of their hatred for him. He asked Ferris to investigate his brothers and locate at least one of them, so she decided to hire a follower to keep an eye on them and asked him to deliver 2 plates of pancakes to them. After he left, Iris appeared behind her and asked her about him. Ferris didn't want to tell her the truth and said that he was a new delivery boy from the pancake shop and told her she would be her follower starting tomorrow. Iris got excited and vowed to do her best and do her job well. Meanwhile, the lazy Reiner was still sleeping around until Kiefer approached him and gave him a portion of lunch, making his fellow boys jealous of her proximity to such an asshole. The next day, Ferris told Cyan that she had managed to find the mastermind of his assassination, but she noticed that the palace was very agitated and easy to get in and out of. In the evening, Shine was with his classmates at the academy and Roll told him that the kingdom of Estepol had invaded their region and the war was about to start. Then a soldier followed him and announced that starting today, all students would be promoted to the front lines and participate in the war. After a while, Reiner went to his room and decided to take a nap before the war started, as if he could do without anything but sleep. Then Kiefer entered and expressed her confusion about his excessive calmness despite the fact that they were about to go to war. Then she expressed her concern for him and feared that he would die in this war and asked him to run away, thinking that he would not be able to defend himself, but he told her that he has no intention of dying and will survive this battle. On the other side, Ferris broke into the mansion of Brofs, one of Shine's brothers, and continued to torture him to force him to tell the truth. When she asked him if he ordered the assassination of Cheyenne, he told her that this was just a trap and that he will die inevitably, as 50 knights from the kingdom of Estepol are preparing to exterminate him and his classmates at the academy, while he thinks that he will be sent to a safe area. On the other hand, everyone was calm and relaxed because they trusted Cheyenne and his decisions and did not think that they would die with him, while there was a spy planted by the Brofs to make sure that the plan was successful. Ferris is surprised when her brother Lucille appears out of nowhere and rips Brof's head off while they are talking. She hits Iris to knock her unconscious and tells her that his survival will disgrace their family name. Ferris asks what his intentions are, and he tells her that their family only serves the Roland Kings and that he needs to see if Cheyenne is fit to lead the empire in the future, and to prove it, he must return alive after a battle against 50 mage knights. At sunrise, Shine and the others arrived at the Roxanne Plains and distributed tasks to his colleagues in setting up tents and completing the preparations, and while Reiner was lying down and enjoying his time as if he was on a summer trip, Tile told him to help them set up the tents, but he ignored the order. Everyone asked Kiefer to help them convince the slacker to help with the preparations as she was the closest person to him, but they were surprised by her reaction and felt that there was something wrong with her, and immediately thought that Reiner was harassing her. But Fall realized that she was suffering from depression due to her negative thoughts about the war and what might happen during it. He remembered what she told him yesterday and that she feared he would die. Tile pushed him to go and talk to her, but instead he lay down next to her to take a nap, even though he does nothing but sleep, and then he was surprised by Kiefer's suggestion. Kiefer suggests that they run away together, and she confesses her love to him, but he tries to take her words as a joke, and she realizes that he doesn't feel the same way and can't understand her intentions, so she apologizes to him because she can't protect him, but she doesn't want to see him dead. Reiner then surprises Reiner by offering her a pack to summon the light beast that inhabits the sky. Then she flees, and before he can realize what's going on around him, he finds Tile lying next to him after someone attacked him and caused his death. When Shine realized what was happening, he ordered everyone to retreat into the woods, then met with Reiner and the others and divided the tasks among them, deciding to buy time for the others and Reiner to confront them. Reiner told him there was no way they could save their remaining comrades alive. They continued to dodge the cavalry attacks and run as far away as possible. Shine realized they were using a spell to increase their speed of movement, and one of them managed to catch him. Reiner had to reveal his hidden ability to steal other people's magic and use the same spell to save Shan. He was revealed to them after they realized he was an alpha, and before they could do anything, he attacked them with a magic spell. Shan scolded him and told him that everyone would be alive if he had used his powers sooner. He told him that he hadn't used his powers in 7 years, and they survived because they only faced 3 of them. The Knight Commander then attacked him from behind, and Shan ended up surrounded by a group of them from all sides. After a while, Reiner regained consciousness to the voice of the Knight Commander and was surprised to find that the Knights had captured Shan and Kiefer and told him that they were the last of the Academy's classmates after they had taken everyone's lives. When he saw his comrades being beaten and tortured in front of his eyes, he unleashed his full power and lost control of himself, and the commander was shocked when one of the knights died just standing in front of him, and when he ordered everyone to use their magic to attack him with a burst, they could not do any damage to him, and Reiner beheaded them with a counterattack and then approached the commander and vowed that he would wipe out his entire army out of existence. In front of Shine and Kiefer, Reiner continued to rip the mares of Eastapol to shreds until there was nothing left, and the plains of Roxanne were a living hell. Then he approached them and almost finished them off, but Shine realized a way to quench his power and eluded him, closing his eyes with his hand. After a while, Reiner regained consciousness, unaware of what he had just done. They found Roland's army reinforcements coming towards them and were relieved to have survived the sudden invasion. As a result, Shine was warmly received by the citizens of the Empire, while Reiner and Kiefer were imprisoned. Reiner was tortured until he begged them to take him back to his cell before he dropped dead from bleeding. Kiefer, on the other hand, was sitting alone in her cell until Reiner joined her and told her that her younger sister was dead and that according to Roland's soldiers, they had gotten rid of her a long time ago. Kiefer thought he was a pawn of Roland's army, perhaps a spy. She told him she didn't want to hear about her sister's death, especially from him, and accused him of knowing all along and playing dumb. She then asked him if he was making fun of her after she told him she loved him for being a thoughtless girl and started crying and blaming herself that there was nothing she could do about her sister. Reiner told her that he didn't know the point of wars as he personally didn't care what they were fought for. That's why he wants to sleep all the time, because people who don't have reasons for wars are the ones who end up getting involved in them. He said that he doesn't want to get involved in anything that causes trouble, and that he wants to live his life without hurting anyone, in a place where he can take his naps in peace. Reiner told her that they had finally decided to release her in fulfillment of his request, as he had asked them to release her in exchange for him being held instead. The guard was curious as to what kind of leverage he had to be able to make deals with the military directly. Kiefer then asked why he helped her get out of prison after she caused everyone to die by betraying them. He replied that humans don't cause each other to die, but monsters do, and he is a monster himself, and he will enjoy sleeping inside the prison as long as he wants. Kiefer kisses him before she leaves and tells him that she now realizes why she fell in love with him, because he doesn't have any reasons to fight and spill blood like the others, and that he has a good heart in addition to his strength. A few days later, Shine came to visit him and wondered about his decision to voluntarily imprison himself to free Kiefer. He told him that it was no different than being locked up in the academy. After the guard leaves, Shine gives him a sharp object and tells him that he will leave horses for him in the North Woods at night. He realizes that he wants him to escape and warns him that this may make them suspect him immediately. Shine tells him that no one has the right to imprison a war hero even if they find out about him. He then adds that this is their only chance to make things right after the war broke out and he failed to become king, but Reiner decides to ignore it and tells him that he refuses to run away as he enjoys sleeping in the dungeon, and there is no guarantee what will happen if things go well. Shine is furious at his behavior, and when the guard tells him that visiting time is over, Reiner tells him before he leaves that he is happy to be here, as he sleeps as long as he wants, and they provide him with 3 meals a day, and he doesn't want anything more than that. So Shine gives in to his desire and decides to make his own way to become the king of the Roland Empire, and then he can get him out of prison. The next day, Shine goes to Farah's house and she is surprised to see him, thinking that he did not survive the war against the Knights of Estapol, but he tells her that he is being treated as a hero of sorts. When she asks why he came, Lucille joins them and tells her that he was the one who summoned him to meet him. He then told him that he had summoned him for one reason, to ask him some questions to determine if he was a good fit, with one condition. He would kill him if he didn't like any of his answers and promised him that he wouldn't feel any pain. Shen accepted his conditions and agreed to be interrogated to determine whether he was suitable to succeed the king. They went to a special interrogation place inside the family home, and Reiner was transferred to a special prison where he could only come out on his grave. He asked the guard to bring him a pen and paper and some books he wanted to borrow from Roland's academy. The guard was surprised that he wanted to get 30 books at once. A few days later, Reiner had a new roommate, a spider who built his home inside his cell, and Reiner used to hang out with him at night when he was bored, and the guard used to bring him a bunch of books every now and then, and he marveled that he kept so many books inside the cell, in addition to being unaffected by the dreary and dark atmosphere of the prison that he spends most of his time awake. Over time, Reiner got along with the guard and even started talking to him about his little girl. The guard told him that watching her grow up day by day was touching, and when he asked him what he would do when she grew up and got married, he got angry and yelled at him not to think about going after her when she became a young woman. Reiner marveled that he'd come to such a suspicious conclusion and told him that the point of his question was that he'd be upset to see his daughter go to war or something like that, since war is an abomination even for soldiers and knights. A few months later, Reiner smelled a sweet smell inside the prison, and when he asked the guard, he told him that he decided to pamper himself today as he was eating a chicken sandwich and felt angry that he was eating whatever he wanted while they fed him soup every day to stay alive. He told him that his wife's business has started to flourish recently as she works as a vegetable seller in the market, and he helps her in the morning, and expressed his desire to spend his life like this rather than being a soldier, as he could not forget the battle he was forced to participate in 7 years ago, in which all his friends died. Reiner realized that he was not the only one with horrible memories of war, and as the days went by, Reiner spent his time collecting and reading books. One day, he was curious to ask Spider why he liked to live in a place like this when there are so many bright places with delicious food. When he took a nap, a bunch of books fell on him, and he almost suffocated, so he decided to clean up after breakfast. When the guard came, Reiner noticed his frowning face and thought he'd had a fight with his wife, but when he found him opening the cell door, he realized he'd been sentenced to death and felt he should be grateful to the Empire for keeping him alive for 2 years. He asked the guard to help him carry the research report he was writing about, but he told him he wasn't allowed to take anything with him, so he decided to follow him out, taking one last look at his cell and saying goodbye to the spider who had shared his cell for 2 years. When they left the prison, he found Farah's waiting for him on the other side of the gate. He was not surprised that she knew his name, and when she accompanied him, he thought to ask her something, but he was surprised when she called him a sex maniac. He asked her why she called him that, and she replied that she knew everything about his past. Then he told her that he was going to escape now. Ferris sarcastically asked him if he thought he could beat her, and he told her that he had made a promise earlier and he couldn't die before he fulfilled it. Then he started to attack her with his magic, but he was surprised that she blocked him and reversed the attack against him, so he realized how strong she was and that he had to take her seriously. And when she found that he was not serious about his attack, she realized why Shine wanted to join them and rushed to attack him without giving him a chance to block her, so he could only try to get away from her at a safe distance, and he could only try to get away from her. Reiner tried to test her powers with his eyes, but was surprised to find that she was just as strong as him without using magic, and when he tried to attack her with water magic, she jumped at him and came close enough to put her blade on his neck, accusing him of trying to suppress his powers by using water instead of flame. He justified it by saying that she would die if he did, and he would not like to burn her beautiful face. She realized that his perverted way of thinking prevents him from making the right decisions on the battlefield. Then she stopped fighting and told him that they should go to meet the king. Reiner refused to follow her and told her that he would not walk willingly towards his inevitable death. She told him that he would regret it later if he did not follow her now, so he had to follow her since he was in the middle of the forest and had nowhere else to go. And when they reached the kingdom, Reiner was surprised by the drastic change in it, as if it had become another country. When he arrived at the royal palace, he found that the inhabitant of the palace was Shine himself, and he realized that he had achieved his goal and became the king of Roland. He felt that all these surprises were too much for him and decided to take a nap in front of the king without embarrassment. When he asked Ferris what he looked like to her, she told him that he was a pedophile who would commit a terrible crime if left alone, and that he was the only person besides her brother who hadn't taken her fight seriously. Shine tries to pique his interest and succeeds when he jokes that Kiefer is dead, then adds that she left the country and asked him to take care of him. Then Reiner is surprised to see his research in his hands and tells him that the title How to Build a Kingdom based on naps is ridiculous, but the content of the research is amazing. It turns out that Reiner had the idea of collecting the remains of legendary heroes and using their powers as a deterrent to reduce wars around the world. And Shine told him that he had thought of this plan earlier, so he would assign him to travel the world to collect the remains of legendary heroes. Reiner was furious and asked him why he had chosen him, but Shine told him that he would not do it alone and appointed Ferris as his assistant so that he would not neglect his mission. When Reiner tried to back out of it, Shine threatened him that he would sentence him to death if he refused. Ferris objected to being assigned to accompany him and told him she was helping him on her brother's orders and was not his subordinate. He threatened to destroy her favorite pancake shop if she refused to follow his orders. Ferris then raised her sword in Reiner's face and gave him the choice between death or following her, then dragged him like garbage outside the palace to prepare to start their journey together. After their departure, Shine realized that Reiner had chosen a different path for himself, but it leads to the same goal of creating a peaceful world. In the present day, Reiner and Ferris arrive in the Nilla Empire. Reiner is exhausted from the distance they've traveled to reach the town's population center, but Ferris tells him to go find a shop that sells pancakes. He told her that he was too exhausted to move and asked her to find a place to rest. She suspected that he was trying to lure her to the inn to do something perverted and told him that they should go to the Nilva Royal Library to research the whereabouts of the remains of legendary heroes. After they arrived at the library, they were stopped by Superintendent Gainel, who told them that he would not allow the likes of them to enter a library containing sacred knowledge. But after noticing Ferris' charming beauty, he let her in without him, and before he objected, he heard the sound of a fight nearby. When he went there, he found two people beating another person in front of his younger siblings, so he protected them and beat the assailants. Then he noticed that the book he was looking for was in the possession of the little girl, and before he asked her to borrow it, he was hit from behind by Ferris' sheath. Then she approached the girl and told her that it was dangerous with Reiner around because he likes to kidnap girls. Then they found Gainel following them to invite them inside after they rescued the young man named Toll. When they went inside the library, Reiner asked him to get all the books on the shelf next to him. Gainel scolded him and told him not to order him around like a nobody since Toll is the grandson of Nelva's Emperor Greed. However, Reiner ignored his words as if he didn't exist and continued to search for books that were interesting to him and asked Toll to help him collect them. He told Toll that if he allowed others to order him around, he would bring shame to the entire empire. Toll tells him that he will bring more shame if he doesn't show some gratitude to the person who saved him. Reiner finds him complex when he hears him say that he was an outcast as a child and believes that he shouldn't have to receive excessive honor. Gainel said that he was born to a commoner mother and his father locked him away in a palace with his siblings. Gainel told him that everyone thinks he is the best suited to lead the empire when they think about the future of the country, and Toll said that he is not the right person to rule. Reiner then asked if there were more books he needed. After going to continue collecting books, Reiner felt that he looked like Cheyenne, while Gainel felt sorry for him as he and his siblings were ostracized by their parents. Meanwhile, Cheyenne was in his palace thinking of a way to control the flooding of the Siles River when Fayol entered and marveled that he had been working all this time and had not even tasted his food. So Cheyenne asked him how things went with Governor Creade regarding the payment of taxes. He replied that he had finished writing a report about it, but he wouldn't show it to him before he ate his food. So Cheyenne had to stop working for a while to eat his breakfast and realized that he was right about appointing him as his special assistant. Fayol told him that this was the best way he could repay his debt since he and his sister would have died if he hadn't met him that day. He then said that sometimes he wondered if someone like him deserved to be in such a position. Cheyenne replied that everyone has the right to be happy in their lives, no matter their social status, although it is impossible in their world now, but the most important thing is not to give up, and asked him to stop thinking negatively about himself and then decided to give him a weekend off to spend time with his sister. After that, he went to a lavish banquet, and his followers marveled that he seemed sullen even though he is a king and should be social with his guests, while he realized that they were trying to evade to spend time with the women at the banquet, so he allowed them to do whatever they wanted during the banquet. He encountered Governors Pearl and Beryl on his way and chatted with them for some time before he realized that Clausbear and Steered were not at the banquet because they were planning to get him removed from office, while a mysterious woman was watching him from a distance. Clock approaches him and tells him that he has just received a report from the guards that Fayol is dead. Pearl and Beryl realize that he is his new assistant and don't care much about his death because he is a commoner. Although Cheyenne felt angry at what they were saying, he controlled his emotions and tried to act diplomatically and go along with their despicable way of thinking. When he went to the crime scene and saw Fayol's body with his own eyes, he blamed himself and took responsibility for Fayol's death. He found that he had written a letter to Vasilina before his death, telling her how happy he he was to have a new and comfortable job under his leadership. When he finished reading his letter, he ordered his followers to give him a proper funeral and to make sure his sister was safe before the nobles got her. Then he approached Fael's body and scolded him for speaking well of him, even though he was just a weak king who couldn't protect anyone. He met Lucille after leaving the crime scene, who offered to help him avenge Fael and exterminate those who had caused his death. Shine replied that the time for revenge had not yet come, and realized that if he had agreed, he would have died by his own hand by now. He then looked up at the moon and wished he could accompany Renner and Ferris on their carefree journey. On the other side, Reiner and Ferris stayed at the toll dorm full of kids and were enjoying dinner with everyone. When Reiner went to his room, Iris appeared out of nowhere and started attacking him randomly, telling him that she was going to protect her sister from him. Then he realized it was Ferris' sister when he saw her walking towards her and telling her that she came to rescue her after noticing her sudden absence from the house. She then said that Shine had told her that she had been kidnapped by a monster and was now on a journey to find the best pancakes ever. Reiner gets the idea that Iris has become their only way of communicating with Shine for the time being. Iris feels threatened to talk to such a monster and decides to destroy him, and soon Reiner finds her rushing towards him and kicking his ass. Meanwhile, Governor Sterid suggested that Shine visit the Nilva Empire himself to show his desire for peace, as the neighboring countries are suspicious of Roland's sudden change thanks to him. Shine told them that there are many internal affairs that take priority at the moment and that he cannot give them a clear answer on the matter. After the end of the interview, Claw guessed that it was a trap to eliminate him, so Shine thought that there may be people in Nilva who are connected to those who want to remove him from his position in Roland. When he arrived at his office, he found a woman waiting for him. Shit, it turned out to be a man named Muran. When he saw him, he apologized that he had to wait for him here after he couldn't find anyone inside, and introduced himself and told him that he was the son of Governor Carl and held the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Royal Imperial Army. Shine asked him why he had come, and he said that he had come to investigate a case involving a group with secret skills for the king that might conflict with the interests of the nobles. Shine told him that he knew everything about his life up to this point and that the Fruai family had bought him from an orphanage. Moran indirectly told him to have a private conversation. After Claude left, he told him that he is the one who needs him because there are lights of hope emanating around him, represented by his followers, but their presence alone is not enough to achieve his goal. Then he asked him to let him endure the darkness for him to help him reach his long-sought goal of raising the imperial flag over the entire continent. Shine laughed at his conjecture and told him that all he wants is for all wars to stop and for all humans to live happily. Moran asks him to appoint him as his advisor in exchange for getting rid of his father himself, and for a moment, Shine remembers the suffering he went through due to his poverty and social status before he sits down at his desk and decides to fulfill Moran's request while being careful of him. The next day, Shine summons Iris to find out how things are going in Nilva, and she tells him about Toll, a prince beloved by everyone in his country, and that Reiner and Ferris are currently staying at his house, and Shine is relieved that they have encountered such a good person on their journey. Callan and Claw objected to the idea, so he told them that rumors of their visit to the Nilva Empire were already spreading around, and Colin speculated that it might be a Sterid trick. While they tried to convince him not to go, only Moran was in favor of the idea, telling him that a visit to Nilva was in order and convincing him that he should pass the traps set for him by some thoughtless nobles without issue in order to benefit from the reunion of the anti-government party. Claw was furious and told him that it would all be over if they succeeded in assassinating Cheyenne. He told them that he intended to accompany him to Nelva and then they would guarantee his safety, but Claw couldn't trust him and suspected that he might be the one charged with his assassination. Ruran replied that if he was sure of it, all he had to do was eliminate him and protect the king. Claw told him that he would not hesitate to do it here, and now he had strong proof that his conjecture was correct. When they arrived at the royal palace of Nilva, the guards were confused, thinking that Cheyenne intended to invade their country. Cheyenne then went to meet King Greed, and Cheyenne expressed his gratitude for his reception. He then expressed his wish that they could establish a long-lasting friendly relationship between the two countries, but they were interrupted by the entrance of Prince Starnall, who mocked Cheyenne's pretense of seeking peace, especially since he rules a culturally backward country like Roland. Cheyenne continued to handle the matter calmly and steadily and introduced himself to Starnall, who continued to mock and belittle him. When his father tried to reprimand him, Starnall pushed him away and ordered him to leave immediately. Greed then apologized for his son's thoughtless rudeness, but Cheyenne told him that nothing he said was wrong, as he was still a young king who lacked strength. So Greed decided to hold a special banquet to welcome him. Then Cheyenne went to his room and continued to read File's last letter over and over again. Muran marveled that he still had that letter, and Cheyenne was curious if Starnall was the one controlling things behind the scenes. He told him that he would reveal the identities of the people he was dealing with at the top level soon, and pledged to protect him. Shine then thought of going on a visit somewhere and asked Moran to take care of things until he returned. He then went to Toll's house, and when Reiner woke up, he was surprised to see him eating breakfast in the dining area. Reiner thought about going back to sleep, but Ferris pushed him inside. He was furious that she was being cruel to him. She told him that her path was blocked because he was standing in front of the door. Shine admired their harmony, but Reiner blamed him for getting her involved in his affairs. Ferris continued to beat him to learn his manners, then sat quietly eating her breakfast while Reiner raged and vowed to get rid of one of them someday. When Toll joined them, he wondered how Shine was related to Reiner. He was about to tell him they weren't related, but Ferris kicked his foot under the table to shut him up. Shine tried to pretend he was related, but Reiner kept denying it, so he stomped on his foot and had to go along with his lie. Then he got tired of the stress they had put him through and decided to go back to sleep. Ferris sarcastically accused him of being tired of chasing women at night in the streets, which increased his anger towards her. Then Shine wondered if Toll was really Prince Starnal's son, and he replied that there was nothing to be proud of, as he was just a burden to his father. Shine told him that he knew about his superior education and that the cabinet had secretly consulted with him without his father's knowledge. He said that his concern for his brothers to live in peace was enough for him. Reiner regretted Toll's lack of interest in a position within his state and thought that he might be a better king than someone like Shine, at least. Shin stomped his foot to shut him up. He was furious and asked him why he had come in the first place. He replied that he just happened to be nearby and asked Reiner and Ferris to do him a favor. In the evening, they sneaked into the royal palace during the banquet to fulfill his request to guard him during the ceremony, and they found him enjoying his time with Toll. Ferris said that he would have destroyed her favorite pancake shop if they had refused his request. After a while, he snuck out of the ballroom and went to meet Moran in secret. Moran told him that he'd gotten rid of Count Oreos because he was one of Starnal's henchmen, and that Starnal had gone mad after learning that Greed intended to make Toll king of Nelva to succeed him. Shine realized that he would have to get rid of his father before that happened. Moran informed him that he had gone to the kingdom of Roland to seek the support of its nobles to carry out his plan, and Shine wanted to make sure that he would help him bring the entire continent of Meneris under his rule. When he realized Moran was on his side, he decided to talk to Greed face to face and let him punish Starnal himself. Then Moran went to the nobles' quarters and got rid of all the Nelva conspirators. Meanwhile, Ferris and Reiner returned to Toll's house after completing their mission and were surprised by the arrival of Moran, who told them that he had come to make sure Toll was dead before he could become a good king of Nelva and make it a center of power. Moran then mistook Reiner for Toll and attacked him before he could use his powers, but Ferris blocked him with all her might. When Reiner examined his powers, he found that he didn't use magic and at the same time couldn't determine what his powers were. Ferris buys time for him to use his spell. Reiner uses an Estipole spell to boost his speed and rushes towards Moran, then uses fire magic to surprise him, but Moran easily deflects his attack. Then he realized that he wasn't Toll because of his exaggerated strength and wondered if Toll had a group of equally talented companions, and decided to make sure Toll died right here and now because he would pose a greater threat. Then, to their surprise, he uses a ranged attack to hold Ferris and summons a monster from the darkness to finish her off, but she manages to free herself and return the attack to the monster, and Reiner uses Izuchi's spell to stun him and get rid of him. Moran took advantage of his distraction and surprised Ferris with a backhanded attack to knock her unconscious. Reiner was furious and told him that she was not a woman who falls easily on the battlefield, and threatened to beat him until his darkness fades away. Then he noticed that Moran could control his power with his ring, and then he remembered the legend of the Dark King who threw the world into the darkness of shadows and gave his disciple a ring imbued with a strange power that allows him to control the darkness. Then that disciple used the power of the ring to assassinate the leaders of hostile countries, until a knight appeared who was able to cut off the finger that held the ring with his sword. Moran tells him that he can't do what he read in the legend of the Dark King with him. Reiner is surprised when Ferris punches him and tells him that instead of wasting his time with a mythical tale, he should have found his weakness. He tells her that he's discovered that he can control his power through the ring, and that they should try to get it in order to beat him. Ferris realizes that the ring is a relic of a legendary hero. Moran laughed at their naive thinking that they could beat him so easily and decided to get rid of them so that they would no longer be an obstacle to him or his master. He vanished into the darkness, and when they were sure he was gone, Ferris fell into his arms, exhausted, and he told her that he would take care of the rest and asked her to rest. After Shine returned to the Roland Empire, he searched for information about Moran before his family adopted him. He found that everyone involved had been eliminated, and when Claude learned that he had eliminated all the nobles conspiring against him, he advised him to strip him of his position. Moran interrupted them by entering the office to give him a report on their visit to Nelva. When Claude left, Moran asked him if he had discovered anything about his past, and when he read the research that had been done on him, he wondered if he was thinking of firing him. He told him that he wasn't thinking about it, especially after he had done so well on their visit to Nelva. Moran was impressed and told him that he would get rid of someone with such a dangerous talent and that his boldness was one of the criteria that qualified him to become king. When Shine asked him about the additional report, he told him that he had attacked the Toll residents and was repelled by Reiner and Ferris. Shine felt as if he had unwittingly tried to get rid of them and blamed himself for making such a big mistake. The next day, Reiner and Ferris decide to leave the Toll residence so that Moran doesn't reappear, while Milk searches around for them to find Reiner. Reiner and Ferris search for the remains of the heroes everywhere for a long time, but they don't find any traces until Reiner begins to suspect that the fortress they are in might have some secrets and doesn't believe that all that's inside the box are records of tax evaders. He checked the map again before Ferris got him killed and found that there was supposed to be a legendary hero's weapon nearby. He told her that the weapon was near the forest they passed through yesterday, and she asked him why he didn't tell her about it yesterday. He explained that he thought the weapon was in someone else's possession or buried, and didn't want to go to the trouble of digging the weapon out of the ground. As they talked, they realized they weren't alone, and that's when the intruders had to appear in front of them, who turned out to be the knights Q and Sui. Then Q told them that they had come to get the treasure here and asked them to hand over at least part of the treasure. Then they rushed to the boxes behind them and started searching them, but they found only reams of useless papers. Reiner tells them that there's nothing in the place but papers. Q asks him what they've been doing in there all this time, and when he's about to tell her about the remains of the legendary heroes, Ferris knocks him down and pretends to be two Nilva detectives sent on a secret mission. Q and Sui decide to leave quietly so as not to ruin their mission, despite Q's suspicions. Meanwhile, Milk is having breakfast at an inn and wonders if Lear is suffering from something when she notices that he's not eating. He tells her that he's just frustrated that they haven't had much luck with their mission so far, while Lack thinks that they would have checked to see if Reiner was using his magic, but Mo tells him that in that case he'd be exposing the Roland Kingdom's magic. Luke agreed and told them that this is why taboo breakers like him are dangerous to countries and armies, and that they shouldn't let him join another country and reveal the secrets of Roland's magic to them. While they were eating, Ku and Sui joined them, and when they realized that they were looking for one of the breakers, they told them that they had come across two suspicious-looking people on their way. Noak was intrigued and asked them to tell her everything that happened between them. In the meantime, Shan went to visit File's grave, apologizing that he hadn't come before because he still lacked the strength to deal with the nobility. While he was talking to File, he was joined by Cloth, Colin, and File's younger sister, Eslina. When he turned to them, she asked him not to show a miserable expression on his face so as not to upset File, and told him that he had always told her how happy he was to be the assistant to such a wonderful king. On the other side, Milk had found Reiner and Ferris thanks to the brothers and was watching them from a distance. Reiner was struggling to find the legendary weapon until he managed to find it. Milk realized that Ferris was using his weakness to force him to obey her orders and decided to give him a helping hand, and she sat and imagined what would happen between them in a way that was both pathetic and disgusting at the same time. Then she decided to come up with a plan and told her teammates that she would initiate the attack while they took the opportunity to capture him. As they began to execute the plan, Milk used an Azuchi spell, but Reiner sensed her presence and blocked the spell. Ferris rushes in to attack her companions, Luke being the first victim. She manages to kick their asses effortlessly and then heads towards Milk. They all end up tied to a large tree. When she asks Reiner if he recognizes her, he doesn't seem to remember her at first glance, so she tries to remind him. Milk tried to remind him of herself and told him that they grew up in the same orphanage together and that he had promised to marry her when they were young. Ferris was surprised that he was using marriage as a way to lure girls at a young age. Milk then surprised her by asking her if she would marry him, assuming what she said was true, and she blushed before answering that she felt it was their destiny to meet again after years of dating. Ferris tells her that the boy she grew up with as a child has grown up and is now an expert pervert and decides to help her out of pity and get rid of Reiner so he doesn't jinx her, but he doesn't care and decides to leave the place, so Ferris follows him, leaving Milk and her companions tied up behind them. He wondered why he had to go through the trouble of following them if Shan had ordered them to do so. She replied that their mission was secret and only the three of them knew about it, and while he was digging he found another weapon, but he couldn't recognize its power. Milk and her companions were trying to free themselves from the ropes when they noticed Nilva's army scouts nearby and thought to ask them for help, especially since they were tasked with hunting down the Empire's taboo breakers. Milk sensed something was wrong about their presence, and when she thought they might be coming to arrest Reiner, she decided to protect him and suddenly screamed at the top of her lungs that she wanted to relieve herself in any way she could. When her voice reached the Nilva scouts, they were able to locate them, and she was surprised to find that they were going to arrest them instead of helping them. Reiner saved them with an Azuchi spell, and Ferris took advantage of their distraction and knocked them out in a flash. Reiner then approaches Milk to free her. She screams at him and calls him an idiot for taking the risk to give him a chance to escape. Ferris tells him that they don't stand a chance against so many soldiers and if he wants to be a hero, he has to clean up the mess. He decides to use the legendary weapon he has, but he can't find anything after examining the weapon. Ferris saves him time by confronting the scouts, and Reiner decides to throw the weapon at them after he can't explain its power. Then, to everyone's surprise, a giant dragon appeared from the ground where the weapon rested, looking similar to Slifer at first glance. As soon as they saw it, the scouts fled, while Reiner and Ferris decided to leave him alone as long as he didn't intend to attack them and left, leaving the rest behind. In the evening, Milk felt guilty because for a moment she almost sacrificed everything to save Reiner, and told her comrades that she didn't deserve to be their leader for acting selfishly in a critical situation. They asked her not to think negatively, and asked her if she still remembered the day they formed their troop. Shine told them that their mission would involve a lot of dirty work, because they would have to eliminate anything that might cause them trouble, and she told him that she would accept anything that might happen. Then she remembered when Reiner saved her as a child in a war, and expressed her desire to return the favor one day, and protect the homeland she met in. Luke tells her that at that time, they decided to believe in her and support her in whatever decision she makes. He tells her not to get upset about what she has already done and to assume that what she has done is right, and promises her that they will always be there for her because they are family, and she feels grateful for their feelings towards her. Meanwhile, Shine is surprised by Selena's desire to work as his assistant to be of help to the man who once made her brother a happy man in his life. Before he can say yes or no, Miran joins them and tells them that the nobles of the Kingdom of Istanbul have begun to rebel against him. The next day, Reiner ended up in a pancake shop, forced to buy all the merchandise for Ferris as an apology for his failure to use the legendary weapon, and she told him that he would buy pancakes for her every day from now on. He told her that she was with him at the time and wondered how she could expect him to use the remains of a hero buried thousands of years ago, and it had nothing to do with buying that many pies for her. When she put her sword to his neck, he stopped complaining and blamed it on Cheyenne, and thought that he was now in his royal palace eating lunch or sleeping as he pleased. As for Cheyenne, he was indirectly reprimanded in the council for his naive behavior with the nobles of Istanbul who dared to rebel against him in the end, and when the council members asked him what he intended to do. Miran told them that he had organized a countermeasure to their rebellion, and was able to find out that the leader of the rebellion against him was Noah, the daughter of the former king of the kingdom. Miran then told them that the rebels had about 50,000 soldiers according to the latest survey, and that it was like a war, and suggested that it would be better to evacuate the provinces near Istanbul and invite their residents to the palace. The provincial governors were perplexed that he would ask them to leave their areas so easily and rejected the idea, saying that none of them would allow his army to set foot on their lands and tamper with them as they wished. Miran told them that he did not mind them staying within their lands, and asked Sion to allow him to take command of the army to guard the provinces and put down the rebellion, but he decided to leave it under the responsibility of Kla, and assigned him to gather information and provide it to him. After the meeting ended, Miran wondered why Shine refused to let him take command of the army, and was surprised to learn that Shine knew that he had started the rebellion against him in the Kingdom of Istanbul, so that he could wipe out all opposition forces from the kingdom in one fell swoop, and use the war as a cover to send spies. To Miran's confusion, Shine didn't think to stop him and told him to continue with his plan to the end. Meanwhile, Noah and Saluel were upset that the former king of Estapol had sold out their country for a position and safe haven in Roland. Then Saluel told her that she is very popular with the army and people of Estapol, and they recognized her as their new leader instead of her father. She expressed her fear of what will happen if they do not win the battle they started against Roland, since the empire treats the people of Estapol well. He told her that it was necessary to go to war with them in order to regain their kingdom from Roland's grip. She said that all she cared about was the welfare and happiness of her people, and thought if she had started a war that would only lead to bloodshed. He tried to reassure her and said that their forces were still capable of confronting Roland, and that this would temporarily ensure that they would not do anything rash. He promised her that he would not back down from standing by her side until death, and No remembered when she told him as a young girl that she wanted to build a kingdom where everyone could live happily. Then she turned to her troops and decided to declare war on Roland to regain the independence of Istanbul once again. Roland's army began to fight a war in the various provinces against Istanbul. Cloth took command of the army and used his magic to destroy his enemies in search of their leader. After he succeeded in finding the leader and eliminating him, he threatened the rest of the soldiers of Istapol that he could face them alone and overcome them, although he regretted his hasty decision to take their leader's life. And over time, Roland's army was able to overthrow the armies of the opponents of the empire in various regions. When the news reached Noah, she realized that he was trying to force the armies to surrender with minimal loss of life, and thought that maybe Shine didn't want to fight the war at all. But the allies continued to urge her to continue fighting, and told her that once Roland took over their entire country, they would start to take their anger out on them. After some time, Salwell handed Roland's army a letter demanding that the army withdraw and release the prisoners, and in case of refusal, they would be forced to cut the throats of all citizens of Istanbul, thinking that this trick would put the kingdom and Cheyenne in an awkward situation and force him to fulfill his demands. He then justified his action to Noah by telling her that he wanted to protect her, which made her even more confused about his decision to turn their entire population into hostages for her. He told her that their people would be humiliated and persecuted if they lost their battle against the Roland Empire. Noah realizes that she is not in charge of the army and that she is just a puppet placed on the throne who can't save anyone. A knight bursts into the hall and tells her that Roland's army has begun to attack them. On the other side, Claude is surprised to find that troops are attacking the castle without his order, and it occurs to him that this is the work of Muran. Meanwhile, the allies of Estepol find themselves in trouble after Roland's army ignored his threat and began to attack. Salwell ordered the soldiers to get rid of some of the hostages to show them that they were serious about their decision, but Noah forbade them to approach anyone and ordered the release of the hostages and decided to do her best to stop the war, even if she had to sacrifice her own life. Muran enters the hall and tells them that Noah's life will not be enough to atone for their crimes against the people of Istanbul, and that exterminating the kingdom is the best option. He then begins to use his abilities to get rid of them all, and Salwell escapes to hide with Noah inside the castle. Noah felt that she had lost everything at that moment, but Salwell told her that there was still one thing left: her life, and she realized then that he intended to assassinate her to put an end to the battle she had started and to be revered by the Roland Empire as the savior of the country, and he had caused all this chaos so that he could carry out his plan. Noah felt sad and betrayed after she trusted him and said that all she wanted was to build a kingdom where everyone could live happily. When he approached her, she tried to stab him with a knife, but he dodged her and took the knife, and before he could get rid of her, Muran's dart beast ate him. Muran then told her that their empire is not so desperate as to make a hero out of someone like that. When she asked him if what was happening was an order from Cyan, he replied that he was the one who caused everything that was happening out there, and he was also the one who conspired with Salwell and tricked him into rebelling against the king. Then he added that Cyan had decided to appoint Claw as commander of the army when he learned of the plan to put down the rebellion instead, and that what happened to Salwell would not change the fact that he had to get rid of her, and that the incident would be classified as a suicide to avoid detection. But before he could approach her, Claw burst into the room and tried to attack him, but he dodged him, then rushed to stand in front of Noah and protect her, and was furious when he realized that he was the cause of all the chaos. Muran tells him that he can't see the burden Cheyenne is carrying on his shoulders because he's the only one of his followers who isn't qualified to serve him. He decides to go ahead with the plan and get rid of Noah and the hostages, and warns him not to get in his way, but Claude doesn't listen to him and prepares to use his unique abilities. Noah felt that the fate of her entire people depended on her life and that they should not die here. Before they clashed with each other, she told Muran that she was willing to address her people and her army and convinced them to follow Roland's empire without having to take lives. Muran wondered if she wouldn't mind if her people called her a traitor who had sold her kingdom to the enemy, but she didn't care and begged him not to let her people die. Muran accepted her offer, and Claw ordered his armies to withdraw and left quietly. Noah told Claw that she trusted him and Cheyenne, and that with their help, the people of Istanbul would live a happy life without war. Meanwhile, Cheyenne was thinking and blaming himself for involving Claw and forcing him to fight a war and bloodshed, although he had hired him to save as many people as possible. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of Iris, who asked him if he was about to cry. She told him that this was the first time she had ever seen someone about to cry, as Ferris never cries and Lucille smiles all the time, which makes him scary to her. When he asked her about Ferris and Reiner's report, she told him that they dug a hole and managed to pull out a dagger-like weapon, and when they threw it away, a huge dragon appeared, at which time Miller entered and gave him a paper with some information, and when he read it, he ordered Iris to return to Reiner's location immediately. The next day, Iris went to where Reiner and Ferris were and wanted to hit him as usual, but he caught her, and due to her excessive movement, Ferris forced her to pass out in a certain way. Cheyenne, on the other hand, hoped that Iris would reach them safely and be able to deliver the message in time. After Iris regained consciousness, she found her sister drowning in pancakes and devoured them until the plate was completely empty. Ferris wondered why she had come and told them about Cheyenne's letter, but she couldn't find it in her bag. When they asked her what it said, she said it was about the sudden disappearance of a dragon, and they remembered that huge monster that appeared from the legendary weapon and realized that he wanted them to look into it. Ferris tells her not to bother trying and that they'll figure it out in time, so she forces Reiner to go with her on an expedition to find out about the missing dragon. After they left, one of them found Cyan's message, and it turns out that he wanted them to never go into the forest again and abandon all their research into the remains of the heroes, as the missing dragon had caused countless deaths before it disappeared. In the meantime, Reiner and Ferris arrived in the forest. As they approached the waterfall, a body fell in front of them, and Reiner realized that the dragon was attacking people indiscriminately. As they went deeper into the forest, they found many bodies lying on the branches, but noticed that there was no blood. When Reiner asks Q and Sui why they are in such a place, Q says that they came to investigate the dragon, and Sui thinks to use the missing dragon as inspiration for his new novel to make the dragon kidnap the princess, and the hero goes to rescue her. But Q scolds him and calls his ideas cliché, which is why all his novels have failed to sell. Ferris notices that Sui has the dagger from which the dragon appeared and asks them to explain, and Sui tells them that they went to the castle that day for the same purpose they are after, which is to collect the remains of the heroes. Reiner realized that they had followed them and waited for the right opportunity to get the dragon dagger, and that they had caused the deaths of so many people who saw the dragon in order to silence them, and Sui justified that it would be better if only the two of them could use this unknown power. Ferris asks what their purpose is in using the remains of the heroes, and they think she's trying to avoid confronting them by asking such a question, but she tells them she doesn't need an answer because she already knows what country they're working for. Reiner then rushed towards Sui to initiate the attack and boosted his speed first. As soon as Sui used his spell, he was shocked to see him copy it even though he didn't finish it. Ku then used her power to help him block his attack even though Ferris tried to attack her, but she was able to dodge her strike at the same time. Ku then counterattacked, causing her to fly high into the air. Reiner rushed towards her to catch her before she hit the ground, and she thanked him indirectly by telling him that she would have died if he hadn't used his body to fall on top of her. Then they realized that the scythe used by Ku is also one of the hero's remains, and when they noticed traces of the scythe strike on Ferris' sword, they realized why there was no blood on the bodies of the victims, and Ferris found that the sword had become heavier due to the ice that had accumulated on it. Reiner decides to use fire magic so that they can neutralize the power of Ku's weapon and find a loophole to overcome them. After Sui learns that he has the alpha mark, he thinks that he should be careful when crystallizing it, but Reiner doesn't understand what he means and wonders that he has the alpha mark and has no idea what it is. Reiner is confused that he knows more about his power than he does, then finds him taking a green sliver out of his bag and is surprised to find him sticking the dagger into his arm and tells them that he intends to show them how to use the remains of the heroes they left behind. And soon the red dragon's head appears instead of his arm and starts attacking them with dragon fire, causing a huge fire around them, and then tells them that this is called the Sword of Scales and can burn its targets as much as the wielder desires. Reiner and Ferris realized that they would have a hard time stopping them. After Q put out the fire with the ice of her scythe, Reiner decided to use lightning to attack him, but Sui blocked him effortlessly thanks to another legendary tool that carries the power of a divine weapon capable of negating magic. Ferris thought about retreating because there was no way they could win with 3 legendary weapons, but she was right. Just as they were about to escape, Sui attacked them, and once he used the power of the legendary weapon, Reiner lost his mobility and began to feel as if he was controlling his own internal powers. He then told Ferris that he had to awaken his alpha mark in order to steal it, as it has been known to destroy everything when the wielder loses control, which is why people hate alpha markers and call them demons. Reiner began to see harsh memories and gradually lost control of himself and used his remaining consciousness to tell Ferris to run as far away as he could before he lost his mind. In time, he became completely under the control of the alpha mark and emitted a tremendous power capable of destroying anything in its path, while Sui enjoyed watching the marker's collapse process unfold perfectly. He then tells Ferris that all he can do now is destroy everything in sight, so he will have to get rid of him and take away his crystal, and he ensures that he will not be harmed by the legendary tool, but he is shocked when he sees it vanish from his hands due to Reiner's immense power. Sui's body gradually began to fade away, and he had to burn his arm to neutralize his attack before he died. He then told Q that they should run away as Reiner is not just an ordinary alpha mark holder, and when he landed on the ground, they ran away as fast as they could, but he told them that he would destroy everything around him and there was no way to escape his power. Reiner recalled a memory from his childhood when he was sitting with his friends and saw a group of soldiers storming their town, killing many of its inhabitants and burning his friend alive. That was the first time he used his alpha power and stole the soldiers' magic and caused a huge fire. When the soldiers realized that he was an alpha, they immediately retreated, and instead of the townspeople protecting and helping him, they called him a monster and were terrified of him and decided to expel him, and Reiner's anger grew grew as he remembered this, and his desire to annihilate everyone became stronger. Ferris realizes that the person standing in front of her is not the Reiner she knows, as he doesn't recognize her and doesn't hesitate to attack her as soon as he notices her presence. She dodges his attack and tells him that she's not surprised that he's an unusual alpha carrier because he was just a lazy, useless, perverted boy. She then told him that she read the report he gave to Cheyenne and was struck by the part where he talked about death and grief for humans. She thought it was written by an idiot, but now she realizes that he wanted to move on after the horrible things he had been subjected to. She then said that so far she had dodged 5 of his attacks, but she had no intention of dodging the next one and would let him decide for himself if he wanted to take her life, but he didn't listen to her and kept casting spells at her. She told him that she didn't consider him a monster and that to her he was a friend and partner, and when he continued to attack her, she screamed at him to wake up Reiner and make him take control of his body again. Then she rushed towards him and grabbed his hand to break the alpha's magic. He asked her to close his eyes to return to normal, but before she did, he tightened his grip on her neck and became in an internal struggle with the beast that possessed him until Ferris was able to approach him and close his eyes to suppress the alpha's power. When Reiner came to his senses, he realized he was just trying to kill her. He told her that this is what he is, a monster who knows nothing but bloodshed and is hated by everyone. He said he didn't want to cause the death of anyone he knew well and asked her to leave him and go back to Roland. Ferris tried to comfort him and told him that she was still alive because he wasn't going to get rid of her as he thought, so he shouldn't call himself a monster. She thought they should go find a place to rest and welcomed him back. The next day, Cheyenne received a report from Reiner about what happened, and while reading the report, he was surprised by Selena's entrance and felt at first glance that it was Fael who was standing in front of him as she asked him to leave work aside to eat his meal as her brother used to do with him. He told her that he would eat his breakfast after he finished reading the last page of the report, but Colin took the paper out of his hand and told her that he was known for his stubbornness. Then Klaus scolded him for deliberately doing everything alone. Colin warned him not to let Fael worry about him, and Selena asked him not to make her brother sad in his grave by continuing to work hard alone. Noah joined them, and when Cheyenne asked if she was getting used to living in the Empire, she told him that she was finally happy thanks to him. When she mentioned Klaus' kindness to her, he blushed. Colin meanly said his decision to take care of her was the right one. He was even more embarrassed when Noah invited him to dinner tonight. Colin asked him if he planned to attend the banquet he told him about, and he told him it had been postponed until tomorrow. Noah asked to borrow him from Cheyenne for a while. After they left, Shen hoped that having Claw by her side would help her cope with the situation since he was holding her hostage for the good of the people of Istanbul. Then they saw Miran standing at the door of the office, and after he was alone with Cheyenne, he gave him a report on the development of the situation in the northern region, which has become somewhat dangerous, as the ruler there has the strongest military forces led by the state of Gastar, and they are annexing small countries from neighboring regions, and at this rate they may have to go to war against them. In order to convince him of the need to go to war against the northern regions, Miran warned him that the empire would fall into a spiral of war and destruction if the regions were not unified as soon as possible, and suggested that they first resort to political cleansing in order to maintain the balance of the empire. Miran then went to meet Duke Styrid, and the Duke offered him to leave Shen's employ and join him, and tried to entice him by giving him the position of his personal assistant, in addition to many privileges, and giving him everything he wanted. Miran told him that only Cyan can give him anything he wishes because he is the only one who allows the weak and the strong to coexist together, and Styrid was surprised that he plans to assassinate him with the rest of the foolish nobles like him, but he wanted to choose between staying with the old powers in the country or joining the side of King Cheyenne. In the evening, Clark went to dinner with Noah and was afraid that she would be angry with him for being late for their date, but he found her waiting for him and told him that this was the first time she had gone out so late. And after their date was over, she looked up at the sky and told him that she was relieved that the Empire had someone like him. When she returned home, she was shocked to see many bodies in front of her. Before she realized what was happening, a masked man held a knife to her throat. Then she saw several of them taking the servants hostage. She asked them not to hurt anyone else. They used the situation to their advantage and told her to obey them. Meanwhile, Claw was on his way home. He felt angry because he couldn't understand what was going on in a woman's mind. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong, like she was trying to call out to him. When he entered, he was surprised to see mercenaries holding hostages, and when he saw Noah sitting on the floor naked in front of him, he was furious and decided to use his crimson hand to attack them. On the other hand, Reiner and Ferris had arrived on their journey to the Rona Empire, specifically the village of Reigate, hoping to find any evidence of the remains of a legendary hero in this area. On their way, they found two people holding and beating a little girl. When they took care of the attackers, the girl asked them to help her and save a man named Arua, who was not a monster as everyone thought. At the royal palace, Shine learned what happened to Noah, and Miran told him that Claw was able to settle the matter with minimal losses. Shine realized that there are those who are trying to get rid of him by any means, even if it is the assassination of the Princess of Istanbul to ignite the rebellion against him again. So Miran suggested him to attract the nobles to his side and accept them as they are until they loosen their defenses, and then get rid of them if he wants. Shine thought that this plan might put many people in danger and the other inhabitants might be persecuted, and many would die of hunger, but Miran told him that everything is planned and waiting for his orders. He asked him before he left if he had anything to do with what happened to Noah, but he denied it. In the meantime, the child Cuckoo told Reiner and Ferris what happened in her village, as the local governor raised the tax fees on the people. Then a group of soldiers came to the village and began to get rid of them one by one, and when one of them almost caused her death, Arua defended her using magic, even though he had never used it before. Then they realized that Arua is an alpha like Reiner, and Cuckoo says that the governor has ordered him to be taken for investigation, so they decide to go to where Arua is and rescue him from the authorities. They find that the authorities have placed Arua in a vacant, walled-in place to allow the destruction to spread without consequence. Reiner is surprised to see him tied to a wooden branch and carried like an animal into the place by the magical knights of the Rona Empire. Meanwhile, it was announced that all of Roland's nobles would receive massive promotions and that citizens with multiple talents and trades would be allowed to join official jobs, making the citizens feel satisfied that their king was trying to provide them with a better life. After announcing the new decrees, Claw expressed his dissatisfaction at being given the rank of marshal and that they would not be happy when he gave them positions on his orders. Noah said that the decision seemed a bit ill-considered, and Colin warned him that dissenting nobles would feel provoked. Shine shrugged off their concerns and marveled that they were complaining despite being promoted. He said they didn't have high ambitions. Nubal told him that they didn't support him to get some jobs, but to put the country's interests first. Shine explained that the promotion decisions were made for Roland's benefit. He then asked them if they had heard of a country called Gastark, and when he found that no one but Claw had heard of it and didn't know much about it, he asked if they had heard of the country of Stol. Colin replied that it is one of the most prominent countries on the continent, and Shine added that it is 5 times stronger than their empire politically and militarily, and yet the state of Gastark has taken 2/3 of their possessions. Noah was surprised that they could conquer a powerful country like Stol so easily. He said that there are many smaller countries that have been conquered, but they can't get accurate information because of their distance from the rest of the countries in terms of distance, but they must not let Gastark get close to them, and told them that they don't have much more time to continue the coalition fighting in the interior of the country. Then Miran joined them, and then Cheyenne told them his proposal, but it did not meet with the approval of all of them, and Claw told him that he would not differ much from the previous king of Roland if he accepted his proposal, but he was surprised that he was 100% convinced of the proposal and decided to start implementing it and at the same time save as many lives as possible of his opponents, as they are still citizens of the Empire, and give them the opportunity to join him and work together to make Roland a better country or oppose him and be forced to get rid of them. Cloth knelt before him and agreed to follow him at all costs. He wondered if Shan had figured it out or if he was still trying to follow the right path, and thought that the path Shine had chosen would lead him to more bloodshed than he could ever imagine. Afterward, Miller met with Milk's team and noticed that his face was frowning suspiciously today. Milk thought that he was angry about their failure in their mission and was worried that he would eliminate them from the mission. When Miller asked if the opponent was stronger than them, she denied it and said that she wasn't serious when she faced him, but next time she would make sure to teach him a hard lesson. After they left, he spoke with Luke privately and learned that they had faced Reiner and that he was a stronger opponent than they expected. Luke told him that the king had begun to take action against his opponents and expressed his desire to get rid of the corrupt nobles as soon as possible. Miller asked him if he hated the nobles even more than before. He replied that he was furious at the thought of how her adopted Milk family treated her. Miller decided that she shouldn't stay in the country for too long so that she wouldn't be involved in the turmoil that was about to erupt. Meanwhile, Reiner and Ferris are watching what the Knights of Ronan are doing to Erua, and Saint Chezo decides to force him to awaken his power for an experiment and starts beating him up to stimulate his alpha mark, which makes Reiner angry and wants to pounce on them. Ferris stops him from showing himself and tells him that they won't be able to save him this way and that they have to come up with a plan. They find the Mage Knights have placed his mother's body in front of him to force him to awaken his powers after the being failed. Then one of the knights approached him and told him that his mother died because she gave birth to a demon like him. Then he found them holding his father and intending to kill him in front of his eyes. Before he died, he told Arua that everything that happened was not his fault and that he should not do what the wizards told him to do. Before the knight could plunge his sword into his body. Reiner appeared out of nowhere and used a speed boost spell to avoid the mages and head towards Arua, while Ferris took care of them. As he was about to reach Arua, Chezo and his minions intercepted him and attacked, but Ferris quickly intercepted him. When Reiner used his alpha power, the knights thought Arua could summon the alpha bearers. They were surprised to find that Reiner had stolen their magic and was using it against them. He then rushed at Chezo and delivered a devastating punch. Reiner tried to wake up Arua's father, telling him that they alone could not save them, and asked him to untie his son and run away with him. The father tried to crawl towards Arua with all his strength to save him, and Reiner felt that this time he might succeed in saving one of them. But before the father could reach his son, one of the knights stuck his weapon into his body, and the father died in front of Arua's eyes. His alpha powers awakened, and he began to lose control of himself. So Reiner rushed towards him and hit him, knocking him unconscious, closing his eyes and telling him to rest. When Ferris took over the cavalry, Reiner picked up Arua. Before he left, Chezo warned him that his gods would punish them, and Reiner almost lost his mind at the thought that they should be punished for having those eyes. Ferris tells him that enemy reinforcements will arrive at any time, and they must leave immediately. As they run, Reiner thinks about why he and others like him were born with this strange power if they deserve to be punished for having it, and he starts to clean Arua's face as his tears fall on him like rain. Reiner sat guarding Arua, who fell into a deep sleep as he waited for Ferris to return. Then he looked at him and remembered Chezo's description of him as a demon and thought that if he were him, he wouldn't want to wake up at all. Then he was surprised by a severe blow from Ferris Sheath, who treated him like a slave and told him not to infect a young boy with his perversion. Then he was surprised that she had brought a fancy carriage so that they could move away from Rona as quickly as possible. So he carried Arua on his back and headed towards her. He didn't believe her when she told him she found it on the side of the road and accused her of stealing the carriage from a nobleman. As soon as he got Arua inside, he found her beating the horse to move as fast as she could, leaving him behind and forcing him to run after her. At Roland's imperial palace, Shan was working until Aslina entered his office and brought him breakfast. When she asked him to take a break to eat, he gave her a report on Claw and found that he was grumbling about his new position and intended to eliminate him as soon as he was done. Then he told her that all the reports he had before him were filled out by people who wished to take high positions from different social classes, but that he was careful to select those who had the qualifications to do their job, whether they were nobles or commoners, in order to make Roland a better country. She told him that one of the measures he should take to make it a better country was to take care of his health and eat regularly. After she left, he sat down and thought about whether the country was on the right path to development and prosperity. Then Claw entered the office and told him that the nobles in the Arquimal region began to move in a suspicious manner. He realized that Moran was the culprit, as the region belonged to his family's property. In the meantime, Carlo held a large banquet and invited dignitaries from all over the country. Carlo was proud of his son Moran, who did his best to make things go well. Then he came out of his room with him to start the meeting with his guests, and as soon as he started his speech, the doors of the hall began to close from all directions while everyone is in full concentration with Carlo's speech urging them to get rid of Cheyenne, while Moran intends to repeat what happened with the Mamluk massacre in the 18th century. After Carlo urges his guests to unite with the king of the Ronan Empire, he asks Moran to explain the plan he has prepared for them, but he remains silent for a moment before he steps forward and tells everyone that they will die here and now, then uses his ring to kill everyone in the audience with dark monsters. In a matter of seconds, the hall was filled with bodies and blood everywhere, and only Moran and his father remained. Carlo wondered why he had done this, and then realized that he had kept him to get rid of him at the end in a special way. Moran told him that he had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and all this time he had been using him as a pawn to achieve his goals. And Carlo was shocked to learn that he had wiped out his family in a series of unfortunate accidents in order to reach the throne and control all the family's property. Before he could say anything else, Moran used his ring to wipe out the last remaining family member. It turns out that Duke Styried was complicit in the massacre. Moran threatens him that if he thinks of betraying him, he will make sure he meets the same fate as his father. Before the Duke can finish his sentence, his head is separated from his body by a mysterious figure. When Moran asked him who he was, the pink-haired Lur claimed to be one of Roland's nobles, but Moran immediately realized that he was lying, as no one in the south of the continent has the same hair color as him, and when Lur refused to tell him who he was, he decided to use force to get rid of him. Lur told him that he wanted to save his power because he had work to do, but he had no choice but to face him. When Lur summoned his lightning beasts, Moran realized that he had a power similar to his own, but told him that he was surprised because he didn't expect someone like him to show up at this time. Then he realized that Styried had deliberately gotten rid of Styried, because he had betrayed someone and wanted revenge, and that someone was in his hometown of Roland. So Lur decided to make sure he took his ring after realizing how smart he was, and that's when their monsters clashed. After a while, Lur found that their fight would not end this way since they are equal in strength, but Moran told him that he is superior to him since he will not be able to use magic to avoid detection and know which country he belongs to, and he cannot use his monsters to escape through closed doors so as not to be killed. When asked about his decision, Lur told him that he intended to choose a third option. He then pulled out a legendary weapon, a crystal, and as soon as he fired a bolt of lightning at it, it glowed and shattered one of the doors, and Lur took the opportunity to run away while Moran was still thinking if he should send his monsters after him or keep them and not be lax. When he was surrounded by the flames of the crystal, he realized that he had underestimated it too much and might die in this place, but he found Claw breaking down a wall to save him in time, and they rushed out of the palace before the blue flames consumed them. After they succeeded in escaping outside, Moran wondered why he was here. He told him that he was here by order of Cheyenne and that he came with some soldiers, but he managed to reach the palace before them. Moran wondered that he did not want to come, yet he left the soldiers behind and rushed to save him, explaining that he wanted to punch him in the face because he was acting on his own. Moran described him as a complicated and eccentric man for acting against his instincts and thanked him for saving him. When Claw asked him about the blue flame, he didn't want to tell him about Lur but thought that their battle had already begun. In the meantime, Shan noticed Lur's lightning monsters approaching him. Then Lucille appeared behind him and told Lur that there was no point in using his monsters against him and threatened him that if he continued to try to attack Cyan, he would wipe him out. The monsters immediately disappeared and they realized that he had run away. Shun wondered if it would be wise to arrest him, and Lucille told him that he could still catch him if he wanted to. He thought about what would happen if he failed to protect the country, and Lucille simply told him that he would get rid of him and take over, and until then, he could do whatever he wanted. On the other side, the Q and Sui brothers were inside the royal palace of the Rona Empire. Lur turned out to be their third brother, and they told the Rona king that they had come as ambassadors of goodwill, commissioned by their country to offer him an alliance. They told him that they knew his country was already allied with Roland, and that they had assassinated Styrid, who had conspired with him to remove Shan from office, meaning he could no longer target Roland's empire. They decided to give him some time to think about his cooperation with Gastark. They told him that they had more work to do and that they would have an answer for him when they got back. They decided to head to Reigate City to find Arua, the Alpha Marker. Meanwhile, Reiner and Ferris were being chased by Chazo and his minions. Reiner drove the chariot at full speed, and when he saw them approaching, he climbed on top of the chariot to use his magic to attack them and succeeded in inflicting overwhelming damage. He then decides to go back to Reigate City to take Cuckoo with them and thinks they should take them to a place where they can live in peace. At Roland Royal Academy 2 years ago, Kiefer was trying to take care of Reiner during training. After class, she tried to wake him up to go home. She heard some of their classmates taunting him loudly and asked him if he wasn't bothered by their words, and he replied that the only thing that bothered him today was that he couldn't skip training because of her. She remembered 4 years ago when she was a teenager and went shopping with her family and was surprised when her younger sister Lomile bought a gift for the three of them. Then they were surprised when some guards broke into the market and called them spies of Eastapol, and Naya confronted them and told them to run away. The knights didn't hesitate to attack her when they saw her carrying a weapon and caused a huge fire in the market, but Naya was able to fight them off, while Kiefer and Lemel ran as fast as they could to safety. When they stopped to catch their breath, they were surprised to find that the knights had surrounded them from all sides and told them that they had gotten Naya, and were shocked to see her head in the hands of one of them. Kiefer was furious and vowed to take out their leader one day. They rushed towards her and started beating her in front of Lemile, who told them that she would do anything to keep her younger sister out of harm's way. The Knight Commander told her that she would have to betray her country in order to ensure Lemile's safety. She broke down and felt bad about herself that she would have to betray the person she loved for her sister, and that she didn't want anyone else to die because of her, and she wished that Reiner could save her. In the meantime, Reiner had fallen asleep while driving the carriage, but he woke up when he saw. In the evening, the village of Voices in the Stoll Empire was attacked, causing everyone to panic. Kiefer was one of the Empire's knights, and her boss ordered her to flee with the villagers because they couldn't hold out much longer. When she asked him about the fate of the citizens still stuck in the neighborhood, he told her to forget about them as Gastark's army would arrive at any moment. Soon, she was surprised by an overwhelming attack from a certain point, and realized that it could reach the children hiding around. Kiefer rushes towards them to save them. By the time she succeeds in protecting them, some arrows have pierced her body, but she fights the pain. When she sees that more arrows are on their way, she decides that she will not die in such a place and uses her magical power to counter the attack. Then, to her surprise, the arrows somehow managed to block her magic. A warrior appeared out of nowhere and saved them just in time with one blow, wiping out all the arrows. He then looked at her sarcastically and called her a fool because the Empire had already abandoned the village and asked her what she thought she could do on her own. She told him that she hates wars and doesn't want anyone to get hurt. He wondered why she hates wars even though she is a soldier. He told her that the magic used against her earlier did not belong to the Stole Empire and called her stupid for sneaking out to save others in the middle of a war between two countries. Then they were joined by some soldiers, and she was surprised when they called him Your Majesty, who turned out to be King Gastark. He told her that he hated war as much as she did, that he hated blood and suffering and the death of friends and children, that he had no intention of letting her die here, and vowed to save everyone on the continent of Minoris and end all wars. Kiefer accused him of being contradictory because he's starting a war to end all wars, and he agreed. Then, to everyone's surprise, he used the magic in his sword and decided to sacrifice his left eye to activate his powers. He then launched a thunderous attack on Stole's army on the other side and wiped out a huge number of them. As soon as his attack was over, he lost his left eye and ordered his soldiers to tell Stole's army to surrender if they didn't want another attack like this. When Kiefer asked him what he had just done, he told her that he had to make a sacrifice in order to use his sacred sword and learn from his followers that he had already sacrificed his sense of smell and his right leg, and told them that he was willing to sacrifice everything he had in order to eliminate his enemies and save a large number of people in the future from the fate of wars. Then he offered Kiefer to accompany him on his way back to Gastark if she wants to protect many people, and told her that his name is Rival Idea and he sits on the throne of the Gastark Empire, but she refused his offer and told him that she intends to join him one day, but not now, so he left with his followers quietly back to his kingdom. In the Roland Empire, the news of the massacre caused by Moran spread quickly among everyone while Claw was grumbling as usual about his current rank in the army, and Moran told him that he is the most suitable person for this job as there is a witty side to his personality that attracts everyone to him as he has a fair amount of naivety. Shine orders them to stop fighting and instructs Cloth to go to Istanbul to help rebuild their army and join the Imperial Army. Cloth told him that there are still soldiers in Istanbul who hold a grudge against them and will not agree to join them, so he said that he can guarantee their approval, especially with the news about the genocide, plus he has a good relationship with their princess Noah. Cloth realized that he wanted him to use Noah and Shine justified that it was necessary for the good of the country. Noah joined them and asked if the country they were talking about included the people of Istanbul, and Shine replied that he was sincere in his desire to avoid fighting with them again. Then he remembered Kiefer's betrayal of him when he was a student at the Royal Academy in favor of Estapol, and that most of his friends died because of it. Noah asked him if he hated Estapol because of it, and he denied it and told her that he still considered Kiefer his friend despite what she did because she was in a critical situation to protect her younger sister. But he vowed that he would stop the wars between Roland and Estapol. He then began to blame himself for not noticing her suffering at the time, having to work as a double agent and causing the death of her colleagues and friends, but vowed that he would stop the wars between Roland and Estapol as long as he was king. Noah felt the sincerity of his desire and decided to do anything to help him achieve his goal. She and Cloth then left to head to Estapol to convince the soldiers to join them, and after they left, Moran decided to go to the Rohan Empire to investigate Styried's connections with the nobles living there. Meanwhile, Reiner and Ferris arrived in Reigate City to pick up Cuckoo and thought they'd sneak past the guards. When they managed to subdue them, Ferris realized that no one was inside the house, and suddenly they were attacked, and it turned out that Q and Sui were waiting for them. Sui expresses his admiration for Reiner's unique strength, to the point where even legendary weapons are useless against him. He realizes that they have found the boy with the alpha mark like them and asks him where they hid him. When Reiner refuses to tell them who attacks them, Reiner kept dodging her attacks and couldn't get away, but soon she joined forces with Ferris, and Q froze her sword and made it heavier, and when she pushed it towards Reiner, they took the opportunity to escape but ended up surrounded by Runa's army. Ferris tells him to protect Arua while she takes care of the soldiers. On his way, Sui tells him that Q is locked inside the palace of the nobleman who rules the area, and when he gets there, he will find him waiting for him. Meanwhile, Moran was in the royal palace of Rona and met Ina, the daughter of the king of Rona, who told him that her father had traveled on a medical trip and was now acting on his behalf. Moran decided to go along with her lie. In the evening, he learned from one of his spies in the army that the king had betrayed the Roland Empire and joined Gastark, in addition to being the main responsible for the plan to assassinate Cheyenne. The soldier begs him to save him from these monsters in exchange for anything he wants. Moran tells him that the agents of Gastark have already crushed all of Rona's soldiers, and he decides to get rid of them after using his power to eliminate his spy. Reiner sat inside the carriage to guard Arua, and worried about Ferris' late return. He looked at Arua and realized that they were both being targeted by the same person and thought that he should protect him by taking away his power before he had to get blood on his hands. Arua finally regained consciousness and panicked as soon as he saw Reiner. He quickly remembered what happened to his parents and started crying until he woke up and started blaming himself for their deaths. Reiner told him that he would not stop him from doing whatever he saw fit to survive. Then he showed him his alpha mark to gain his trust and told him that he had been thinking a lot about how his existence causes nothing but harm and death to everyone around him, and that everyone hates him and calls him a monster or a demon because of his curse and wonders why someone like him exists in life. He stopped asking himself these questions after he met several people who told him to keep living, and he realized that there was a reason why he was still alive and dreamed of creating a world where everyone lived happily and no one had to lose anything. Arua thought that he didn't have anyone left who would want him to stay alive and reminded him of what his father had told him before he died. Arua then remembered that he had asked him to continue living even after his death, and then Reiner told him that his girlfriend was still alive and waiting for him to return, but someone had taken her hostage to show himself. Arua decides to go rescue her with him, but Reiner quickly discourages him when he mentions that his current level of strength is pathetic and he can't even protect himself, so he asks him to teach him what he needs to do to save Kyuko. Ferris jumps in and warns him not to get involved with a pervert like Reiner, telling him that he's just a lazy, useless slacker who chases women. Reiner asks him not to believe her and tells her that he was asking him to teach him martial arts to save Kyuko, but Ferris refuses and decides to teach him what he needs to save Kyuko. Ferris refused and decided to take him with her to train him away. So Reiner entered the carriage, reassured that they would be fine on their own, and decided to take a nap until their return. In the evening, the three of them went to the nobleman's palace, and Arua was eager to save his friend. Reiner warned him that he might die in this mission, but Arua told him that he wouldn't mind going alone if necessary. Ferris felt honored that she was able to show him the right path and not become as useless as Reiner. They went inside the palace, keeping an eye out for any traps nearby, but found Ku waiting for them inside with Sui, who told them that they now had Kyuko in their possession, and Reiner got cocky and told them that they wouldn't be able to beat him. Sui suggested that he surrender peacefully as all they wanted was his alpha to help their country. Reiner was surprised to learn that they were working for Gastark, so he tells them that the whole world will eventually belong to Gastark and become a peaceful world ruled by a worthy king, and everyone will live happily because of him. Reiner pretends to think about joining them since their king wants to build a peaceful world and then wonders why they are taking innocent lives if they want peace. He then told them that what he had witnessed from their behavior so far only showed that their king was a filthy person and that Gastark would not be a place he wanted to belong to even if they treated alphas like humans. Sui felt angry at his words and told him that getting rid of some humans is necessary in order to subjugate other countries to them with minimal losses in exchange for enduring the pain of being forced to get rid of those who get in their way. Reiner said that he thought his life was worthless because he had caused the death of many who considered him a friend because of his eyes, but Arua's life was different, as he had never harmed anyone, and yet they wanted to eliminate him. He then told them that Arua still has a future and can return to normal, but Sui thought that no country would welcome alphas among its people, and Reiner told him that this is the difference between Roland and Gastar, as Shine seeks to save everyone from all classes, and always deludes himself that he is able to do so, so much so that he blames himself when anyone dies. So he tells him that even if he can avoid sacrifices now, he won't be able to do so in the future. Realizing that he has failed to negotiate with them, he decides to use force and plunges the dagger into his arm to summon the dragon's head. When he attacked, Reiner used his alpha eyes, but Sui easily blocked him and told him he couldn't do anything by using ordinary magic against a legendary weapon, but was surprised by a bolt of lightning shot towards him while Reiner was casting his spell. On the other side, Ferris clashed with Q and tried to use the lightning bolt to her advantage. When Q tried to form an ice barrier between them, she plunged her sword into the barrier and was able to cross over to the other side to attack Sui. He decides to use his dragon power to burn her. Reiner manages to hit him with a bolt of lightning, and when he is about to die, Ku saves him just in time with her scythe. Reiner is frustrated that their plan has failed and asks Arua, the one with the surprise attacks, to show himself. Sui realizes that Reiner and Arua's skills are troublesome and figures out why humans hate their kind because they tremble in fear of them. Reiner tells him that they are the ones who are always afraid and regret being alive every day. Sui suggests they allow themselves to die and not fight back and tells him that he doesn't want to fight him again. They find Ku dragging Kyuko out and he tells them that he will get rid of her since he can't beat them. Before the dragon could fire his flames at her, a dark monster appeared behind him and ate his arm. Ferris took advantage of their distraction to take Kyuko away, while Ku was stunned that someone as powerful as her brother Lur had appeared from the darkness, and Moran and Ferris and Reiner were able to escape. When Sui saw that there was no way to escape death now, he asked Q to leave him behind, but Moran left them no way to defend themselves and used his ring to attack with the darkness, and Reiner used his power to protect them and told them to run away. After they left, Moran was surprised that he decided to protect those who wanted to get rid of him, but he realized that they belonged to Roland after listening to Reiner's speech beforehand, and when he asked him why he made his decision, Reiner replied that they don't want to get rid of everything that is an obstacle to them like him. Moran thought about what Shine was planning to do with the Alpha Bearer and his desire to collect the remains of the heroes, then he decided to leave because he had no reason to fight them. Before disappearing into the darkness, he advised them that if they continued to get rid of all the human obstacles in their way, all that will remain in the end are useful people, and for the Alpha Bearers, getting rid of all humans will give them a world where they can live safely, and the idea that everyone lives together happily without sacrifice is just nonsense. Reiner thanked him for helping them create a breach so they could save Kyuko. Moran scoffed that he thought he was doing it on purpose for them and told him he might want to get rid of him someday. After he left, Kyuko regained consciousness and was happy to see Arua. Reiner thought he should take them to a safe place and thought he could get Milk and her companions to take care of them, but then it occurred to him. Meanwhile, Shine was thinking that the war was about to start and no one would be able to stop it, although no one wanted a war between everyone. Lucille told him that humans have always gotten rid of each other for a better future and to realize their dreams, which they cling to and entrust to him as their king. Shine expressed his desire to fulfill everyone's dreams and hopes by creating a world without wars and no one dies, and Lucille realized that he is trying to achieve his dream by any means, even though he knows that it is impossible to do so. So he told him that as long as he sees his dream, he will be able to reach it one day because he made a promise to someone before. Moran returned to Roland and told Shine what he found out, and that the Rona Empire was mainly involved in the assassination attempt on him after their king submitted to Gastark and agreed to join them, then told him about Gastark's use of a strange type of magic while they were attacking Stoll and caused the extermination of tens of thousands of their soldiers. Shine realized that Justark had started using the remains of the heroes she had managed to obtain and thought that if the whole world were to seek out the remains of heroes to strengthen their powers, the world would turn into one big massacre. Meanwhile, Reiner and Ferris were thinking that Shine must be enjoying his time as king and doing whatever he wants, and Reiner felt a grudge and vowed to torture him to death when they returned home. Ferris scolded him for messing up with the Milk Band and crashing the boat they were on, but the only positive thing was that they managed to send Arua and Kyuko back to Roland with them. While they were talking, a storm formed above them, and it rained heavily over their heads, and they ended up diving into the deep sea after being hit by a violent wave. And at night, Reiner woke up and found himself lying on the beach. Then he smelled a good smell from a certain direction, and when he went in the direction of the smell, he found Luke preparing and cooking food alone after being separated from the band, and Reiner did not recognize him at first, and when Luke sensed that someone was around him, he hid behind a large rock in preparation for any attack. While hiding, Reiner approaches and tastes some of the food. Before he can enjoy his meal, Luke suddenly attacks him, and they exchange attacks until they are close enough to each other to realize they are not enemies. Meanwhile, Milk was walking through the woods without a destination, hoping that Reiner and her companions were okay, when she noticed Ferris nearby and decided to hide, planning to attack her and free Reiner from her. But when she jumped towards her, she ended up tripping in the grass and being exposed. Ferris mocked her as a woman who had been cheated on and abandoned by Reiner. She was furious and told her that he had not abandoned her and that she knew she was forcing him to work with her to take advantage of him in some way. But Ferris claimed that he was the one threatening her and forcing her to work with him and accused him of being a pervert who was after her and her younger sister. When Milk refused to believe her, Ferris continued to slander him, telling her that Arua and Kyuko were his illegitimate children and that he had decided to send them with her band so that he could continue to pursue women in the various countries they traveled to. Luke, on the other hand, is furious that he has to share his food with Reiner, who takes pity on him because he has the worst job in the army and can't quit because of the king. Luke tells him that they are all happy to work under him because he is doing his best for the Empire. Reiner feels like he's lying, or maybe there's something he can't say, like he wants to increase his pay or work fewer hours to get more sleep. So Luke tells him that he won't let his commander marry someone like him. While they were talking, they were surprised by a surprise attack from Milk. Then she approached him in a rage and asked him to explain what Ferris had said about him and continued to attack them both even though Luke had nothing to do with it. So they had no choice but to run away, but they found Ferris standing on top of the hill on the other side eating her pancakes. When Reiner realized they were close to home, he decided to go to Cheyenne and destroy him, while Ferris thought she would make Roland's empire the home of pancakes when she took over from him. They agreed to make the empire the home of pancakes and naps and rushed towards the palace. Meanwhile, Sean pondered whether his dreams and hopes for the empire were real or imagined and felt felt angry at the thought of failing to fulfill the dream for which he had been crowned king, to create a peaceful world free of war and hatred. He apologized to her for scaring her, and she thanked him for his good treatment of her and her fellow servants, and told him that they were mistreated and overtaxed by their local ruler. After he left the office, Reiner and Ferris sneaked into the palace to teach him a lesson, while the band of prohibitionists followed them to find out what they were planning, and were shocked by the idea that they were targeting the king to overthrow the government, then surprised that Latch was hit in the center of his head after Ferris pointed a small wooden stick at him when she felt that she was being followed. Reiner then asked her how they were going to torture Cheyenne, and she thought of stealing something valuable to him. As the band of outlaws eavesdropped, they were surprised to find Claw behind them, and to their confusion, Luke seemed to know him well. He told them that they were in the army together before he joined the band. He then asked Claw about his trip to Istanbul. He told him that he was headed there, but heard rumors that someone was trying to assassinate Cheyenne. Milk became concerned about Reiner and pretended to have a stomach ache and needed to use the restroom. Luke deliberately pointed her in the direction Reiner and Ferris were going so she could follow them. When she got there, she was surprised to find him telling her to keep her head down so he could attack one of the intruders hiding in the dark hallway. Ferris rushed after them and managed to take them out before they escaped. Reiner then realized that Cheyenne was having a hard time as king because he was being targeted for assassination, so he was surprised that he was upset about it, even though he was planning to do the same thing. He felt frustrated after remembering that he was after him and wished he had let them get to him first, but he ended up running away from Milk's spells after he angered her. On the other hand, Cheyenne was thinking of a way to stand up to the Gastark Empire and decided to get some reinforcements by strengthening ties with the Kingdom of Istanbul and leaving the army in the care of Klaf while he takes care of the nobles. When he went into his room, he found a book falling from the top of the door. He saw that Reiner was sleeping like he was staying in a 5-star hotel, so he threw the book at him to wake him up. When he scolded him for his behavior, he told him that he was going to do the same thing to him by leaving such a large book on the doorstep. Then he asked him why he was sleeping in his bed, and Reiner told him about the incident in which he drifted in the ocean until he found himself near Roland, and then he was thinking about whether he was satisfied with his life at the moment and found that the reason for his constant dissatisfaction with his situation was the arrogant king, and blamed Cheyenne for everything bad that happened to him. Cheyenne realized that this is the reason why he came after him and tried to assassinate him with a dictionary, and he burst out laughing that this is the truth that he came to after traveling around the world east and west, then told him that he was hasty in his decision, as it is not easy to assassinate the king of a country, especially since he is loved by his people. Reiner asked him where he got his self-confidence from, and Cheyenne arrogantly replied that he was just a person born to be king, which made him furious and vowed to get rid of him and bring peace to the empire. When he attacked him, he noticed that he was exhausted when he stared at him closely. He told him that if he were him, he would sleep 50 hours a day and suggested that he stop doing his job completely for once. While they were talking, Milk and Ferris joined them and accused them of having just been engaged in an immoral act. Reiner was furious that she was deliberately trying to discredit him, while Cheyenne smiled softly and lay on his bed as if for the first time in a long time, but still thinking that he had to fulfill his dream for the people he loved. On the other hand, Moran realizes that Reiner is the king's weak point, as he is afraid to leave him alone, and that they want to use the remains of legendary heroes to spread peace in the world and stop wars, and he realizes that he must get rid of Reiner to cause Cheyenne's certain collapse. Ferris remembers her past when she was reading a novel with her brother Lucille, and when she got to the part where one of the characters declares her love, she wondered what love is, and he wondered that she doesn't know what love really means, but he told her that it's the same feeling he feels about her that their parents feel about them, and patted her on the head because she is doing well in her training and to make her feel what love is like. One day she was training hard with her mother, and when she failed to keep up with her strength, her mother called her a disappointment for not being able to block a simple blow, so she tried to get up again despite her exhaustion, but the mother kept scolding her and saying all sorts of negative things. Ferris felt angry, as if her mother regretted having her or hated her, unlike her father, who had high hopes for her after all. Then her mother approached her and told her that she had to be at least a girl worthy of belonging to the family to avoid failure. When she knocked her to the ground, she was surprised to see her body hit the ground next to her, and soon she saw blood flowing from her body. Then she saw Lucille standing with a knife and blood splattered on his clothes, and told their father that his sister was not a tool to be messed with. Their father backed away and called him a loser next to Ferris, telling him that their family doesn't need people who don't fit in, and that he intends to get rid of them because they didn't measure up. And soon they started fighting in front of Ferris. In the end, Lucille was able to overcome his father and get rid of him as he had done with his mother. Then he smashed his head with his magical power. Then he looked at Ferris and asked her to come closer to him, and there was nothing to be afraid of, and he promised her that he would protect her from now on. Ferris has been living under Lucille's care ever since, and has regained her confidence over time. In the meantime, she went to Reiner's motel room and woke him up and told him that there was something urgent, which turned out to mean that her favorite pie shop had been re-restricted and that other stalls were opening. Reiner tried to sleep a little longer and ignore her overzealousness, but Milt burst into the room and saw Ferris trying to force him awake. And when she imagined what they were doing before she came, she was furious, and he realized she had gotten it wrong, and Ferris pretended they were doing weird things before she came, and he ended up getting crushed on his bed. Shine then entered his room and found Reiner asleep on his bed after Milk threw him out of the room with her loud explosion. Reiner told him that no one would disturb his peaceful sleep in this room, especially Ferris. Shine tells him that he wants him and Ferris to accompany him to the Kingdom of Istanbul because he needs protection. He suggests that he should hire several people to be his bodyguards, and he tells him that he and Ferris are the only ones he can trust that far. He then threatened to use his power as king to force him to do things he didn't like. He got out of bed and told him that he had decided to entrust Arua to the Ferris family to take care of him. Reiner took the opportunity to get out of working with him and told him he had an important matter to discuss with Arua. Luke, meanwhile, was at the band's headquarters and got the book he had been looking for after Miller gave it to him and told him that it was a valuable book as there were only a few copies of it on the continent. When Luke examined the book, he read something that interested him, and when Miller asked him if he found anything in particular, he told him that there were many points that he could use as a reference for his mission. On the other hand, Kiefer was reading the same book about the alpha markers and was surprised to learn that they always end up dying when they lose control. She remembered the day she betrayed him at the academy when he lost control of himself and almost took her soul with Cheyenne and was able to return to normal without dying. Then she realized that there are still many rumors circulating about the alpha mark, and on her way out of the library, the sunlight reflected in her eyes, and she imagined for a moment that it was Rival's sword before she left the library. Renner then headed towards the Ferris home and found Crocelli greeting him to tell him that the children were waiting for him. He felt relieved that they were safe and doing well in their new home. As he walked around the house, he kept checking everything around him and found that they had their own dojo, but Crocelli told him that it was Lucile's room. When Reiner asked him about their parents, he did not answer him directly, so he realized that they had died a long time ago and that Ferris had been free since then, which made Crocelli surprised that he realized things so quickly. And Crocelli did not deny that she was mistreated by them before their death and told him that she was 14 when they died. While they were talking, Reiner received a backhand from Iris and fell to the ground. She told Crocelli that he should be careful of people like him and not let them get close to him. When Arua and Kyuku joined them, she told them to beat him up, and before he could fully get up, he received another backhand from Ferris, who felt uncomfortable with his presence in her house. Afterward, they all sat around enjoying their time together eating pancakes, while Reiner was absent-mindedly staring at the dojo and was curious enough to use his power to check it out when he was surprised to find himself in another place, as if he had been transported into space, and found his body gradually fading away, and he screamed until he regained consciousness to Arua's voice. He then thought to ask Arua to take a look at the dojo with his alpha and told him to close his eyes if the situation became dangerous. When Arua used his power, Reiner was surprised that what had just happened to him hadn't happened to him, so he suspected that something was wrong with this place. In the evening, he told Ferris about the mission Shine had given them, and she felt irritated that he was getting them into trouble. She decided it would be best to continue their search for the remains of the legendary heroes, and he felt relieved that they had agreed on something for the first time. When night falls, Reiner decides to sneak into the house again to check on the dojo. When he gets inside, he uses his power to examine it further, but Lucille appears out of nowhere, as he already knows her name. Lucille then told him that he had wished for this meeting for a long time, and when he used his aura to test his reaction, he was impressed that he didn't move an inch and realized that he was as strong as his sister, and told him that he would have died if Ferris was serious about attacking him. Lucille asked him if it was okay to leave his sister and the king in his care in Istanbul. Reiner replied that it was his duty as head of the family to protect the king, and wondered if Shine had deliberately asked him and Ferris to accompany him. Then he guessed that Lucille couldn't protect him outside Roland's borders. When he used his powers, he found that there was a reason he couldn't leave the Empire, and that there might be a curse binding him to this place, as his alphas couldn't sense his presence inside the dojo. Then Reiner told him that he suspected that he was not human like the rest of his brothers. Then he was surprised by a hand clamping down on his neck as he stood behind him, and told him that Ferris was completely human and not like them, and told him not to think about marrying her because he would not allow his blood and his blood to mix. He then realized that he was safe to leave her in his care because he could guarantee that a monster like him would never be able to reach anything for the rest of his life. He then disappeared from in front of him, but Reiner was surprised that he had somehow entered his body, and he could hear his voice inside him telling him to raise his head and continued to take care of Ferris. When Reiner left to go home, he encountered Milk on his way. When she noticed his pale face, she approached him, but he told her he was fine, then asked her why she was around at this time, and she gave him an invitation to her birthday party tomorrow. Reiner remembered that he would have to leave with Ferris tomorrow to start their journey again, and she told him that she didn't know her real birthday, which is why her band members suggested choosing the day of formation as her new birthday, and asked him to come tomorrow before she left in a hurry. He thought to convince Ferris to postpone their trip by one day under the pretext of trying to get rid of Shine again. Meanwhile, Luke was planning to lure Reiner to capture him so that Milk wouldn't have to take his life if he lost control of himself. While Milk was surprised to see Moran appear in front of her after he summoned his dark monsters and surrounded her from all sides. When Reiner returned to his room and read the contents of the invitation, he found an order signed by Cyan to get rid of him if he lost control of himself. So he lay on his bed with Lucile's words still echoing in his head and felt that he was right about him. The next day, Reiner left his room while Ferris was waiting for him near the pie shop. When she realized he was late, she burst into the room to wake him up, but was surprised to find him not in his bed. On the other side, Lack rushed to where the others were to tell them that Milk hadn't returned to her room since yesterday. Luke suspects that Reiner may have hurt her, and when they ask him what to do, he tells them that she may be with Reiner and that they should look everywhere for her before making any decisions. Meanwhile, Ferris breaks into Shine's office thinking that he's hiding somewhere inside. When she realized he wasn't there, she told Shine that he had disappeared and then told him what they were going to do to avoid accompanying him to Istanbul. He thought that maybe Reiner had decided to abandon the expedition suddenly, and when he asked her if she noticed any change in him lately, she remembered that he met Lucille yesterday according to what he told her, and she couldn't figure out why they met. He felt angry that Lucille was the cause of his disappearance and found Ferris looking frustrated because he had promised to carry the pie tins for her as they left. Colin joined them to give him Klaus' report from Estapol, and when he read it, he was surprised that an alpha carrier had appeared in the kingdom and caused so much damage that he had to combine the armies of both kingdoms to take care of it. Ferris thought it was Reiner, but Shine told her that it was impossible for him to get to Istanbul in such a short time, as he disappeared just this morning, and decided to travel to Istanbul alone to support Klaf in his battle to capture the Alpha without disposing of him, and assigned Ferris the task of looking for Reiner. On the other side, Claw was searching for the Alpha Bearer with Bayuz, who told him that the Alpha Bearer used to appear from time to time in the area and deliberately attack people, and when he described his appearance to Claw, he remembered that he had seen a person with the same description as a child who shed human blood and devoured people, and thought that he might have reappeared. In the meantime, Kiefer was researching various books about the history of the Gastark Empire and found it to be a country full of mysteries, but she was able to find important information about the Alpha Bearers, that one type can enter the dream world of others with a code called Ebera, and another type can devour humans with Inu Doi, among others. Kiefer realized that there are 5 types of Alpha Bearers and that Reiner belongs to those who can analyze the magical abilities around them. Alpha Bearers often cannot return to normal after losing control. She remembered when he lost control that day and was able to help him regain consciousness. Rival interrupted her after he entered the room and saw that she was engaged in research and offered to take a break and drink tea together. She was surprised that he already knew her name, so he told her that it was normal for him to want to know the name of the woman he fell in love with. He told her that he had only investigated her name and refused to know anything about her past, despite the insistence of his followers, and that he wanted to know her name to be able to seduce her. She asked him if he didn't suspect that she was a spy from some country. He confidently said that he has a good eye for women, and that they are similar in that they are all just 2 idiots who hate war, so they should communicate with each other more, and he can help her learn anything she wants to know about Gastark. As he spoke, she saw a glimpse of her memories of Reiner before she decided to get along with him. In the meantime, Klav and Bayuz arrive in one of the districts of Istanbul and find many bodies lying in the streets and the city in chaos. When he sees the Alpha dragging a corpse behind him, he realizes that it is the person he saw as a child. As Bayuz described him, Klav was both excited and angry that he had finally found the person who had ruined his life. When Tyr devoured his victim in front of the army, Klav ordered them to attack him in one fell swoop. Klaw thought he could easily finish him off, but he managed to withstand their overwhelming attack without moving. Then he moved to where they were gathered and decapitated one of the soldiers right in front of their eyes, and after he finished eating him, he decided to leave quietly. Klaw was furious and ordered his soldiers to continue the attack, but he teleported behind them and told them not to waste his time because he had to go look for someone. He ate one of the soldiers again and then continued to beat the rest of them one by one. Klaw decides to use his strength and fight him man to man. Tyr is impressed by his speed for a normal human and recognizes him when he takes a closer look. When Claw finds that he remembers what he did years ago, he decides to take revenge and vows to make him regret leaving him alive that day. After a moment, Tyr praised his abilities, but soon found himself surrounded on all sides. He blocked the soldiers' attacks on one side and then stood in a tree after Claw had taken his arm without realizing it. Everyone was shocked that their leader had been defeated for the first time. Then they saw him devour his arm without mercy and expressed his happiness that he had left him alive that day to have this moment, and told them that he could erase them from existence with one blow after Claw's power flowed into his body. In a matter of seconds, he began wiping out large groups of soldiers in a flash, while Roll thought that they should retreat now and treat Claw's injury, but he ordered him to take charge of the retreat and prevent Tyr from escaping for as long as possible, and asked him to convey his greetings to Cheyenne and Noah in case he did not survive. Beos rushes towards him to pick him up and run away, finding the soldiers fighting tooth and nail to defend him and give him time to get off the battlefield. He then orders the soldiers to fire large-scale magic at him so that they can retreat while he devours the magic. Luke suspected that her disappearance and Reiner's departure from the inn this morning had something to do with each other, and he felt guilty for deliberately placing the royal decree inside the invitation envelope to indirectly warn him. As he was walking down an alley, he sensed a group of people hiding around him and ordered them to show themselves to him. Then a group of people appeared, claiming they had milk and ordering him to come with them. He realized that Reiner's disappearance had nothing to do with what was happening now and that the gang was after him. Luke told them that they were magic traps that he had set up and warned them that their feet would explode if they tried to move. They were amazed to find that he could tell which country they belonged to by their movements, and he also found out that the person who had kidnapped Milk was Moran. Then Moran appeared from the darkness and expressed his admiration for his sharp intelligence and meticulous investigations. Then he got rid of his followers after they became useless, and told Luke that he knew a lot about his history and that he had not been defeated in 20 battles he had fought so far. When he asked him about Milk's whereabouts, Moran asked him to do him a favor before discussing her, and then he was surprised that he asked him to assassinate Reiner as Shine had ordered. Luke put his hand on his weapon while answering no to his request, so Moran decided to use the power of his ring and summon his monsters to attack him, but he was surprised that his monsters faded when they reached his range, so he decided to use the power of his ring and summon his monsters to attack him. Before he can use another spell, he finds himself bound by magical ropes, and Luke warns him that he will lose his arms if he thinks about moving his body. The next morning, Reiner sits alone eating pancakes and thinking that Ferris will be angry with him for breaking his promise with her. Reiner remembered his past when he woke up in the middle of the night because he was afraid to sleep alone and found his mother had intended to get rid of him, but the father stopped her in time. She blamed herself for falling in love with someone higher than her, and she is not from a noble family, and that the birth of their child with this curse is a divine punishment. The father tried to calm her down and took the gun from her and told her that they would not need anything as long as they were together, and apologized to Reiner for disturbing him, then hugged him and told her that none of them would die no matter what. Suddenly, Reiner found himself in a dark place that he could not recognize. Then Ferris and Shine appeared behind him, but they quickly faded into nothingness. Then he was surprised to see his body gradually fade away before he woke up from this nightmare. When he woke up from his dream, he was able to interpret it that he was wanted from birth, and his father tried to take good care of him. Then he remembered what Lucelle told him a few days ago, and that a monster like him will not be able to gain anything, and when he reread the royal decree, he decided to stay away from everyone and continue to live alone. In the meantime, Roland's soldiers returned to the Empire and informed Cyan that Claw had somehow managed to survive despite being badly damaged, so he decided to head to Istanbul immediately. On the other side, Lear met with Colin and Aslina and told them that Luke and Milk had been missing for 2 days. When he asked them if they knew anything about it, they replied that they had no idea where they were, and that Reiner had also disappeared 2 days ago. Lear asked if he had heard anything about him, and Lear said that he was supposed to head to the Eastapol border on his own. On the other hand, Ferris was standing sad and absent-minded in the garden of the family home, and although Eris had bought her favorite pies, she did not react and tried to comfort her, telling her that they should let the soldiers and followers search for him, and they will definitely be able to find him. After she left, she remembered her last moments with Reiner before his disappearance, and wondered that she felt a great pain in her chest after his absence. Then she felt Lucille standing behind her, and asked him how long he had been watching her, and he replied that he had been doing so since she was just a little girl. She was curious as to what he did to Reiner to disappear. He told her that he had warned him not to approach her in any way, and when he saw her look at him angrily, he realized that she had become somewhat affectionate with him, and expressed his happiness that she had become a young woman, and at the same time told her that it made him feel lonely because she would go away someday. Then he disappeared in a flash when he noticed a visitor inside the house. Then she saw a girl approaching her and telling her that they were able to locate Reiner. she felt relieved and vowed to make him regret breaking the promise they made together. On the other side, Shine arrives in Istanbul and finds Klov lying in bed. Noah cries next to him, while the soldiers discuss how they will survive Tyr's reappearance. Shine was relieved that he was still alive even though he had lost his arm, while Claw angrily told them that he had faced the man who had wiped out his entire squad before and was furious that he had been defeated by him again. Shine decided to lead the army back to the place where they fought with Tyr again, and when Roll told him that the army was worried, he addressed them all and told them that no one would be able to beat them as long as they were with him, and mounted his horse after thinking a good plan to lead the army, and they all had the confidence to follow him. Meanwhile, Reiner was sitting in the dining hall of the inn, absent-minded and staring at the map in front of him as he thought about what he would have to do from now on. Before he started eating, he was surprised when Ferris entered the yard, and the first thing she did when she saw him, she drew a sword in his face and rushed towards him to kick his ass in front of everyone. But they panicked and left the yard. Then she started berating him for leaving her waiting for him with the 14 boxes of pies he was supposed to be carrying. When she managed to get him, she was surprised when he asked her if she was one of the elite knights chosen to execute him, and tried to change the subject when he realized she had no idea. Then she asked him what her brother had told him and if he had decided to run away because of his warning not to approach her. She felt bad that despite his popularity because of his perversion and his pursuit of girls, he decided to run away like a coward because of one warning from Lucille. While they were talking, Tyr burst in, blood dripping from his mouth. It turned out that he was looking for Reiner in the first place, and rushed to attack them without realizing it, and when Ferris pointed her sword at him, he retreated to a safe distance. Reiner tried to use his power to attack him, but he was unable to do anything against Tyr's black hole-like power and found himself being pulled towards him. Tyr then tightened his grip on them after he was able to determine which of them had the alpha mark. Then he introduced himself to them and told them that he is the bearer of Enudoa's divine eyes, and that he came to take Reiner after his friend had a dream about him where he saw that his heart was crying because of the wounds of others to him, and before he felt anyone around him, Tyr felt an arrow pierce his body, and then the arrows began to rain down on him like bullets. When Reiner and Ferris took the opportunity to escape, they found Roland's army led by Shine attacking the inn, and Shine ordered the soldiers to stop attacking as soon as they saw them, and after a while Tyr came out of the inn with a number of arrows piercing his back, and before he could use his strength, he found thousands of arrows piercing his entire body. Despite his injuries, he rushed towards one of the soldiers and smashed his head in front of them. After realizing that he was attacked by ordinary arrows, he ate the soldier to heal his injuries. He felt a strong desire to eat Shine's head, but before ordering his soldiers to attack, he asked him if he had any desire to surrender. He told him confidently that he could eat him before the arrows of his soldiers reached him, but he could not do it now, so that Reiner would not lose his control, and then everyone was surprised after Reiner's truth was revealed in front of them, and when they started calling him a monster, he remembered the persecution and racism he suffered as a child. Terra told him that this is how humans have always been and will not be able to accept them under any circumstances. Shine tried to calm things down and told them that Reiner is not a monster like Tyr, and then Tyr offered him to join him as he will never find a place among humans, while Ferris tried to convince him not to listen to his words. Tyr tells him that he will find many friends like them if he chooses to join him, and asks him to attack him with his eyes so that he can be fully healed and can take him away from this place. Reiner makes his decision and tells Cheyenne that he will not cause him any more trouble so that he does not have to get rid of him as he had planned. Tyr burst out laughing that Cheyenne was pretending to be kind, and Cheyenne tried to justify the situation to him, but Reiner refused to listen to him and told him that he didn't do anything wrong in making his decision and blamed himself for causing him pain just because he's still alive. He then decided to use his power to heal Tyr before the soldiers could fire their arrows at Tyr. When he regained his health, he took Reiner to a place where he could feel like he belonged. Ferris tried to stop him from leaving but couldn't touch him because of the barrier that had formed between them. After their departure, Shan felt proud and declared his army's victory in the battle, and as soon as everyone started cheering and chanting his name, Ferris left in sorrow and told him that it was not his fault, as Reiner said, because he was doing his duty as king, and then he was surrounded by the crowd of soldiers who rallied around him, and after they returned to the Empire, he found a warm welcome by the army and the people. But he was not happy after losing his friend, and at nightfall Reiner took one last look at the Empire before he left with Tyr. A few days later, news of the gathering of Alpha Bearers spread across the continent, and when the news reached Rival, he realized that they may intend to form a group to oppose his country, and he was interrupted by Kiefer's intrusion into the room, where she could not help herself when she saw him examining bright jewels. He told her that they weren't for her, but that he could buy her any jewelry she wanted if she was interested. She was furious and headed out of the room, taking a closer look at the jewelry, and Rival sensed that something was wrong behind her curiosity. On the other side, Tyr and Reiner were on their way to the place where the rest of their ancestors were, and Tyr told him that from the moment they first awakened their powers, they were no longer human like the others, they were above them, and he couldn't live with them even if he loved them. The next day, Ferris went to the pancake shop to eat some pancakes, and when she found the taste unpalatable this time, she felt angry and wished that Reiner was with her to force him to eat those pancakes. Then she remembered the time they spent together during their trip, and felt bored and lonely. Then she remembered when Tyr told him before they left that their friends were waiting for him, and wondered if Reiner considered her a friend. Then she left, leaving the bags of pancakes behind. On the other side, Shan met with the council, who began scolding him for allowing an alpha bearer to live among the people of the Empire. Shan explained that Reiner had undergone special and rigorous training under the previous king to become known as the most powerful sorcerer in Roland. They realized he was trying to convince them that the alpha bearer would be of great benefit to the military if used properly. Shan replied that he had assigned a special squad to keep him under surveillance to ensure that he did not lose control of his powers, and ordered them to get rid of him as soon as that happened, and that he did all this for the good of the country. After the meeting was over, Shan sat alone and remembered his friend's last words to him and refused to admit that they were right. Then he realized the irony of fate, that he was the one who reached out to Reiner in the first place, and he himself abandoned him without doing anything and began to cry out of loneliness. In the Gastark Empire, Rival met with his advisory council to discuss his marriage to Kiefer, but Rigwald strongly objected to it. She happened to enter the meeting room, and when he mentioned the marriage to her, she was surprised and asked him what he was planning. Rival ignored her and told everyone that he would marry her sooner or later. Rigwald objected again and told him that he would not allow a woman of unknown origin to bear his name and stand by his side. And then they were interrupted by the sound of Kuv screaming for Rival, and when they went out into the courtyard, they found her holding Sui, who had been seriously injured and lost his arm. Sui told them to take care of Kuv first because she had to use the power of her scythe to bring him to the palace. Rival summoned doctors to perform emergency surgery on Sui and vowed to save him, but Sui felt it might be the last time he could speak as Rigwald carried Ku to rest in his arms, and Kiefer realized how powerful the Gastar Empire is and that their soldiers are willing to do anything for their king, while he uses his body to make sacrifices to move forward. When Kiefer wonders what happened to Sui to cause such serious damage, he tells him that he encountered someone using the same monster ring that Lur has. He also discovers that there is a monster lending his power to the Roland Empire named Reiner. Kiefer is startled to hear his name, and Rigwald notices and tells him that she seems to know something about the Alpha Bearer. Meanwhile, Reiner was sitting with Tyr, and when he saw that Tyr had brought him pancakes, he didn't eat them and told him that he hated them. Tyr felt that he was having a hard time accepting the fact that he was not human, and told him that his tragedy had already begun at birth because he had been convinced that he was human as a child, and after loving them and devoting himself to them, he would end up betraying them by being betrayed by them. Reiner asked him if it was similar for him, and he replied that the timing of the awakening of his powers was different for him, as they were activated before he was born, and told that he felt a voice in his mother's womb that only he could hear telling him to unleash his powers, and his first victim was his mother. Reiner was a little surprised when Reiner told him that he knew that to him he was a monster, and told him that from now on, the logic he was raised with would still run through him, but it wouldn't change the fact that he was superior to humans, and as they talked, Lur was watching them from a distance. Khan then gave Cloth a report on Reiner, and said he still didn't understand that their king had allowed an alpha like him to live among them normally, while Claude marveled that he had survived all that time and hadn't lost control of his powers and died. Colin told him that he seems to be a rare species that can return to normal after losing control, and Claw found that all information about his true identity is unknown, yet he never planned to betray the Empire, and sat thinking about how he felt all these years, and maybe he went through horrible experiences like his ancestors. On the other side, Reiner and Tyr went to a shelter where the rest of the friends lived, and Tyr told him that there was a temporary place that they planned to leave in the coming days. He was surprised when a group of children came out to welcome Tyr back, and as he watched them having fun, he couldn't believe that they were all alpha carriers like him. He told him that they were homeless children, hunted by humans all the time, and told him about when he was attacked by the three brothers who wanted to take away his power after they caused the death of 38 children, and he had to protect the rest at all costs. He then vowed that he would never forgive the Gastark Empire for what they had done, and that he would be able to avenge them one day. He expressed his desire to protect the remaining children at all costs, and create a world where they could be happy, which is why he wanted to have a companion like him. In the evening, the children sat around asking him questions, and when one of them asked him about his special ability, he told them that he prefers to take naps, and they realized that he was a useless person. Then Lofra joined them and told him that he liked naps as well. Then Tyr came out and told Lofra that what he saw in the dream was real, and that he found Reiner and an inn in Istanbul. Then Lofra told him that he has the power of Gabora, which gives him the ability to enter the dreams of others and know what they contain, and he realized that this is how he was able to read his dream. Then he was surprised to be asked the same question that Lucelle had asked him. Then Lofra quickly corrected himself and told him that he only sees small parts of other people's dreams. In addition to that, he has been watching him for a long time without Tyr and the others knowing. Reiner asked him why, and he replied that he was special because he was different from other alpha bearers and was characterized by a kind heart, and because of that he felt sorry for the cruelty of humans, and despite his loneliness, he was always afraid of hurting others because he loves humans. Reiner told him not to talk about him with a frown and asked him if what he had just said didn't apply to him. He replied that this was why he had been summoned to where they were staying, because he wanted to save everyone and their fellow alpha carriers across the continent, and asked him to save them because he couldn't do it alone. In the evening, they all sat down to dinner together, and the children realized that Puika was falling in love with Lofra because she was giving him more food than anyone else. As he sat with them, Reiner felt like he had a real family while Lur hid in the grass and watched them. After they went to sleep, Reiner sat and thought about what Tyr had told him. Then he felt that the life of alpha bearers is not much different from the life of ordinary humans, and wondered that despite that, they cannot coexist with them. Then his thoughts were interrupted by a suspicious sound outside, and when he came out of the shelter to take a look, he was able to sense the presence of one of them, and he realized that it was Luke, who realized why he was called the most powerful magician in Roland, and then told him that he came to get rid of him as Shan had ordered him earlier. Although Luke did not accept Moran's request at first to get rid of Reiner, he accepted the mission when he promised to release Milk if he completed the mission, and he noticed during their conversation that Luke had bound him with a legendary tool, and Luke told him that he got it after Reiner left it behind. When he described to him the capabilities of the tool, he realized that it is a legendary and dangerous weapon, and may be more dangerous if it falls into the hands of one of the countries around them. Luke felt that he meant Gastark, so Moran told him that he had been watching Reiner's travels all the time and found that he was someone important to the king because he would help him realize his dream and his naive perception. After he went to where Reiner was to begin his mission, they began to clash under the watchful eye of Lur, who was watching silently, while Luke blamed Reiner for abandoning the king's side and ignoring his summons. He wondered if that was the reason he was chasing him and wanting to assassinate him. He replied that he knew why his commander loved him and that his death would cause her a lot of grief, but he wanted to get rid of him willingly and would not allow him to get closer to Milk anymore. Meanwhile, Tyr notices something suspicious happening outside and wakes up the others while Luke continues to attack Reiner and tells him that he can't beat him in a predetermined fight. When Reiner uses his power, he finds that he has set up several magical traps around them. When he noticed that there were no traps in the direction Luke was going, he decided to rush towards him, but to his surprise, his body became unbalanced and fell to the ground. And it turned out that Luke had used the legendary weapon without realizing it, and he felt that he was in trouble and unable to move. Before he could receive an attack from him, he was surprised to receive a severe blow that pushed him several meters away from Luke. He found Ferris standing on his back and then deliberately stepped on him to hurt him. He realized that she was still angry about his breaking their promise, so he told her that he was ready to compensate her with a free meal of pancakes. She ignores his words and asks why Luke is trying to get rid of him, while Luke realizes that she followed him to find out where Reiner is. On the other side, the others are surprised when Lur breaks into the shelter and Tyr tries to stop him and tells the kids to run away from the place immediately. When Reiner and Ferris head to the shelter, they are surprised to find a three-headed monster attacking the others, and Lofra sacrifices himself to protect Pika and the children. Tyr is shocked to find Lofra drowning in his own blood and on the verge of death. They are soon shocked when Puika loses control of herself and awakens her powers. Reiner rushes towards her to help her get back to normal, but he is attacked by the monster. Then Lur appears in front of him and tells him not to get in his way. Then he used his crystal to take away Pika's power, and she immediately fell dead before their eyes without any of them being able to help her. And after Lur took her life, he coldly asked the others to lose control of themselves so that he could crystallize their powers. Reiner was furious and attacked him with his magic, but he was able to block it easily, and when he wanted to return the attack, Ferris rushed towards his monsters and managed to kill them with one blow, and Tyr rushed towards him in a fit of rage, but he was quickly knocked down by a blow from Lur. Reiner used the fire spell to attack him from several directions, and then Lur launched a counterattack with the same spell, but it destroyed his monsters and caused them to fall like meteors on the children, and he felt frustrated that he had caused their death before he took away their powers. Reiner became angry and rushed towards him to finish him off, dodging his attacks until he decided to use his spell up close and found Ferris standing in front of him to block his monsters, only to be surprised when Luke pulled him back from behind to protect him from the explosion. Afterward, Reiner scolds her for rushing in front of Magic with such force, and Ferris yells at him that he is the stupid one here for wanting to die alone, considering himself a monster and disappearing suddenly without caring about her, and tells him that she will not think that way about him no matter what he does. Lur laughed at her disclosure of her feelings and guessed that the monster could turn into a human, and everyone could live happily ever after if this was a fairy tale. She told him that she didn't care that he was a monster. While Lur was telling her how dangerous it was for people like him to survive, Reiner started crying and was surprised that she was talking about him so carelessly and asked her if someone like him could continue to live. She smiled at him and told him that she would be very lonely if he died. Lur took advantage of her lax defenses and surprised her with a surprise attack. Reiner lunged at her, but was soon unable to move after Lur used his crystal to force him to awaken his power. Reiner remembered the same feeling he had when Sui used the same ability, and the voice of the demon inside him began to urge him to destroy and annihilate everything around him until he found himself drowning in a sea of blood with the monstrous version of him in front of him devouring his thoughts. Reiner tried to resist his demon with everything he had, but he began to drown in the sea of blood little by little, and the more he sank, the more he realized the truth about himself, that he is just a monster who will not be able to achieve anything with his bloody hands. But when he remembered the Alpha Children and Ferris' face, a bright light emitted from his hand, and then he was able to suppress the monster inside him and regain consciousness. Lur was shocked to find that the crystal stone he had taken out of the crystal shattered before his eyes, and Reiner had returned to normal without outside help. When he tried to use it again, Luke tied his hand with the legendary threads and threatened to send his head to the king of Gastark if he thought he would stand up to him. Lur was able to destroy his strings with the crystal, and Reiner used his power to attack him, but it turns out he meant to give Tyr some power so he could take the kids away after they realized they were still alive, and Tyr vowed to make sure he died next time. When Lur ended up facing Reiner and Luke together, he retreated to a safe distance and told Reiner that he was the answer to all the formulas. When Reiner questioned him about it, he burst out laughing because he had no idea about himself and realized that the hero was not yet complete and decided to retreat. Luke is relieved that he's gone and decides to leave as well. He tells Reiner that Ferris will wake up any minute as she has a mild concussion. When he approaches her, she regains consciousness, ignores him completely, and goes to pick up her sword. She asks him if he really thinks that Shine was planning to get rid of him, and he tells her that he has always carried the entire burden on his shoulders and done his best for everyone else, so he considers himself useless while they all do their best. He told her that he had to run away and live alone because he realizes the fact that he is always a source of danger and harm to others. Then he pulled himself together and decided to go back to Roland and stop running away because he has a bad feeling about the Gastark Empire and may need to use his power. Then he asked her to do him a favor to get rid of him if he lost control of himself, and she agreed to do it if it would bring him home. Meanwhile, Shine sat frustrated and unmotivated, and Lucille told him that Reiner was coming back to the Empire and thought to use him as an intermediary between him and the Alpha Carriers so that they could form a vanguard army against Gastark. When Lucille asked him if it would be better if Luke assassinated him, he replied that he did not intend to get rid of him, and Lucille told him that he chose to go down the most brutal path, and if he chose to get rid of his friend, he would take the right path and be able to dispense with everything that is dear to him, as he will always find a replacement for him, and he wished him not to regret his decision in the future. A few days later, Rival receives a report of a suspicious group of mercenaries attacking soldiers in an area of the Ronin Empire near Roland. Realizing that they have resorted to the use of forbidden magic, Rigwalt suggests that Kiefer interrogate him to confirm his conjecture. In the meantime, Reiner returned to Roland with Ferris, and he was confused to see Shan after what happened between them last time, but he was surprised when he knocked on his door and no one answered, and what added to his confusion was that after he opened the door to the room, he found a huge amount of papers lined up around the room while Shine was sitting at his desk. Reiner tried to pass through the stacks of papers to avoid scattering, but he was soon shocked when Shine told him that all these papers were for his backlog of work since his departure, and that he wouldn't get a minute's sleep until he finished them all. When he told Ferris that he would put her in charge until Reiner was done, she protested that it would interfere with her pancake time. Just as they were about to leave, he slammed the office doors shut without moving and told them to get to work right away. But when Ferris reached for her sword, she couldn't find it and remembered that she'd given it to the guards before entering the office. Reiner was furious and kept calling him names, while Shine was happy to be back together and wondered if Reiner wasn't thinking of going anywhere. On the other side, Moran was eavesdropping on what was happening inside. Milk regained consciousness after having a dream about Shine sitting alone in complete darkness and crying so hard that he told her he wanted to die. When she woke up, she heard some people talking near her, who turned out to be members of her band. Remembering the last thing that happened to her before she lost consciousness, She wondered why Moran was after her. Luke told her that she was safe now and that they had nothing to worry about, and they decided to prepare food for her, while Milk was grateful to be with them again. Milk woke up in the middle of the night after having a nightmare and felt that her band members were hiding something from her. She remembered what they were talking about before they noticed her awakening, and that they had mentioned Khan's name, and wondered if there was a connection between her kidnapping and the king. Then she thought about looking for someone else who knew everything about the king, and then she remembered her father being a nobleman of the empire, but she hesitated to go to him to ask him about the matter, especially after remembering how harshly he treated her. Luke saw her running down the street through his window. A moment later, Milk arrived at her family's palace. When she entered, she found the palace in complete ruins, with no one inside. Luke appears behind her and tells her that her parents are dead. He starts telling her about how things work in Roland, where nobles buy orphans, raise them as soldiers, and send them into battle instead of their real children. Milk realized that she was in fact an orphan and Cloud's family was not her real family. Luke knew about this and kept quiet so as not to hurt her feelings. Then she asked him to tell her what was happening in the country right now. The next day, Clock decided to leave the hospital after he got a new prosthetic arm and wanted to get used to using it in a short period of time in order to return to work. And although Noah was worried about him, he told her that he couldn't relax forever. She realized that he intended to go back to battle and felt a little sad. Then she held his new hand and told him that it was just as warm as when they first met. Claw approached her and tried to kiss her, but they were interrupted by Khan's corruption for a moment, and he felt he was right not to bring Aslina with him. Noah was embarrassed and rushed out quickly, while Klaus said that she looked too good to be his, so he tried to change the subject and asked him for an update. Khan replied that the details of the Milk family assassination are still unknown, but what is remarkable is that all the nobles opposing Shine are being eliminated one by one. When Claw asked if Moran was involved, Khan denied it, and Claw wondered who was behind the recent suspicious movements. Meanwhile, Reiner was sitting on the couch, exhausted after a full day's work without sleep and furious that Ferris had managed to evade and escape after going out to buy pancakes in the middle of the night. Then he felt that he might die if he stayed awake any longer. Shine told him that he had only stayed awake for one night. Reiner was furious and accused him of trying to kill him indirectly, but Shine didn't answer him, so he realized that he was exhausted and still continued to work. Shine told him that he has to do a lot of work himself, especially since things have not calmed down after what happened in Istanbul, and he is worried about the movements of other countries, and then asked him to return to complete his work. Reiner told him that he may die if he continues to work at this rate, and then he was surprised by his serious question if he intends to take his place to become king in the event of his death. Then he replied that he is not suitable for this position because he is a very lazy person, while Shine thought that this is the right reason for him to take the position. Reiner told him that it would be impossible for him to accept being appointed king of the empire because it would be too much hard work. Shine sarcastically thought about resigning his position, but Reiner encouraged him and told him that he would be able to take naps all day long. Shine thought it sounded like a nice idea and hoped he could do it someday. Reiner felt that he was suffering a lot and yet he was still holding on, and thought that if Shine fell asleep before him, he might not be able to sleep at all. Suddenly, Shine raised his head and was surprised that he had taken a nap while they were talking. When he asked Reiner told him that he had only been asleep for a couple of minutes. Then he decided to leave to get some rest and told him that he intended to sleep for 3 days. Then he started talking to himself, feeling angry at Reiner's return and asking himself if he really wanted to get rid of him. Then he thought that he had made a promise to him to change the country and he should fulfill it. The voice inside him tried to convince him that the best way for him is to assassinate his friend, so he told him to shut up and that things will not go the way he wants them to. Then Moran's voice interrupted his thoughts, asking him if he intended to spare Reiner's life, as he was thinking of having Luke assassinate him, and he felt that he would cause the death of his friend. And then Moran reminded him that he was the one who ordered the elimination of the nobles who opposed him and expressed his desire to kill Reiner, as his survival would not benefit them, and he knew that the moment of his death would be a milestone in the king's transformation and the fading of his kindness. He added that with Reiner's death, King Shine will be born, who is feared by everyone and capable of making any sacrifices and imposing his control over the world. Shine told him that he would not allow him to carry out his plan, so he said that he would accept any punishment he imposed on him after Reiner's death. Shine wondered if he intended to disobey his orders, and Moran replied that he knows that he is convinced in his heart that Reiner needs to die, so he told him that he made a decisive and non-negotiable decision that Reiner will not die under any circumstances, and Moran tried to object to his decision, but he ordered him to be silent. Moran was surprised by a bright light as he opened his office door. When he entered, he found Shine sitting at his desk, asking him if he thought the world existed on his pathetic map. Shine gets up, emits a flame-like aura, and tells him that he will now show him the light and the dark and their true enemy. Moran's reaction is to burst out laughing. Meanwhile, Reiner is on his way to the inn and thinks that he can't put everything on Cheyenne's shoulders. Then he remembered the days he spent with alpha bearers like him and thought that he still needed to work harder. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice calling him from behind. When he turned around, he was shocked when he realized it was Lyril. But soon Anya moved behind him again, and when he turned towards him again, he found him rushing towards him and sticking his weapon right into his heart, causing him to fall unconscious on the spot. After Lyril realizes that Reiner has lost consciousness, he finds Lucelle standing behind him and tells him that he won't let him act randomly in his presence, and it turns out that they already know each other very well. Lucelle says that Reiner hasn't gotten to the point where he can see the portal yet, and when Lyril tells him that it's none of his business, he realizes that he's going to get in the way and prevent him from getting rid of it. Lyril pulls out a blue pendant, and Lucelle tells him that something like a legendary hero's relic won't kill him. He threw it into the sky and ordered whatever was inside to destroy everything. Lucille then rushed towards Roland's mansion, while Lyril used the opportunity to take Reiner away. After the light disappeared, Lucille appeared inside Cheyenne's office and told them that everything was over after Lyril's escape. Cheyenne sensed that something was wrong by his change in tone and ordered Moran to find Lyril as soon as possible and get rid of him. After Moran's departure, Cheyenne was surprised to find that he was coughing up a yellow liquid from his body. He felt happy that his desire to save the world was about to be realized. Then he remembered when Lucille had questioned him before he became king and threatened to get rid of him if he was not satisfied with his answers. He followed Lucille, thinking that he would do anything to achieve his goal and change his country for the better. When he entered the gate, he was sitting in a private place having a conversation with himself and told the demonic part of him that he would not allow him to do what he wanted. So he told him that he was just an imaginary person who would fade away over time and he could not do anything to him, and in any case he would lose. On the other side, Ferris rushed after Reiner after she noticed that he had disappeared with the light in the sky a little while ago. When she found Lyril, she headed towards him and raised her sword to order him to stop where he was. When she asked him what he had done to him, he replied with another question about whether she loved him. She was furious and charged at him, but he was quicker than her and was able to parry her sword swing, then put Reiner aside and was eager to see more of her. Ferris warned him that underestimating her would result in his eventual death. When she attacked him again, she was surprised to see a large amount of blood spurting out in front of her as Lyril took advantage of her distraction to move in behind her, telling her that he had eliminated Reiner and that her chances of winning were gone. Ferris couldn't believe it and vowed to end his life right here and now, but as she approached him, Lyril hit her with a blow that knocked her unconscious. Reiner then found himself in the place where he goes when he loses control of himself and heard a voice telling him to bring annihilation to the world and that he has been waiting for this day. Then he was surprised by the appearance of a mysterious entity in front of him. The entity tells him that he will be freed from his seal after he devours it, and it turns out that this entity is the Alpha force that Reiner carries inside him. Then he was surprised by Alpha's initiative to attack him, and in the meantime the team of prohibited superheroes was facing a paranormal who escaped from the experimental laboratory after causing the destruction of everything around him. After they succeeded in eliminating him, Milk was surprised to learn that Shine was aware that experiments were being conducted on humans to give them powers beyond normal humans, and Luke told her that the parahuman had obtained forbidden magic and had to be disposed according to orders. Milk realized that she was the last to know and that her comrades had deliberately kept the dark side of the Empire hidden from her. Then she found the superhero still alive and rushed towards him, asking if he would find peace in his death. She remembered Milk asking Reiner when they were younger if he would marry her when they were older and still alive, but she had to leave before she heard his answer. She thought there was no need for them to make promises as she was going to die anyway, but was surprised when Reiner encouraged her and told her he didn't intend to die. She felt sorry that she had failed to save the superhero from dying and that all she could do was sit next to him and cry, and vowed that she would dedicate her life to protecting the country where Reiner lived even if everything went according to Cheyenne's plan. On the other side, Reiner was able to overcome his Alpha and destroy it. Then he found a body emerging from the viscous liquid that came out of the Alpha and was amazed when he saw that it was his mother, who rushed to embrace him and could not believe that she saw him in front of his eyes after he had grown so much. As he was in her arms, he was surprised to see the Alpha rise again and become more fierce. She told him to run away quickly before the Weaver of all formulas appeared and told him to touch the portal so that he could protect everything he held dear. Then he found her pushing him away, wishing to have more time with him to tell him how much she loved him, and sacrificed herself so that he could survive. Reiner had no choice but to run until a portal appeared in front of him, and he rushed towards it, and when he touched it, he began to see flashes of memories of another person asking him for help who looked like a legendary hero. Reiner wakes up and finds Ferris sleeping next to him and wonders if he's still alive after being stabbed. Ferris wakes up and doesn't know where she is. When she realizes that she's been sleeping next to him all this time, she blushes and shatters the window with her screams. Meanwhile, Shine was still fighting a psychological battle to keep Reiner alive, while blaming himself for his betrayal and using saving the world as an excuse. At the same time, he vowed to assassinate him to save him before he fell into darkness, and his inner voice told him to get some rest and let him take over. After Shine came back to reality, Lusal asked him if he had finally made up his mind. As Shine looked at him, he realized that things were going to go according to his plan. On the other side, Reiner realized that Ferris had no memory of what happened to her before she passed out after destroying the room and beating him up. As Reiner undresses, she notices a distinctive mark against his heart, and they are surprised by a violent knock on the door. On the other side, Kiefer is being held by Rival, and she sees him approaching her. When she asks him if he knows that something is forming in Roland, he tells her that the hero who kept fighting to save the world searched for shattered powers and was sealed away, and to break that seal, he devoured the powers of the one and only demon. He tells her that his empire is moving toward the center of the continent and that they may end up facing Roland. He agrees to save Reiner before Shan betrays him and tells her to make sure she returns to his side with Reiner. A few days later, Rival prepared to march his army to the center of the continent and vowed to save the world and make it a peaceful place. Meanwhile, Reiner was so overwhelmed by the backlog of work that he didn't get enough sleep. As Ferris sat relaxing and eating her favorite pancakes, he told her that he felt like he was going to die by having to work 4 days straight to finish his backlog of reports, and soon he fell down, exhausted after draining all his energy. Ferris rushes over to him and tells him not to fall asleep and keeps slapping him so he doesn't get a chance to sleep. Then Shine enters the office and tells them that there's something they need to take care of, not caring that Reiner is exhausted from working so hard, while begging him to find someone else to do the job. Shine puts a big stack of reports in front of them and tells them that they'll be in big trouble if they can't handle them in a week. Reiner is surprised to find out that he's planning a birthday party. Meanwhile, Moran was planning a proposal on the day of Shine's party. He wanted to publish a paper on Roland's cruelty and torturing criminals in order to reduce the crime rate in the country, and decided to make sure that Shine's birthday party was fun this year. Claw, on the other hand, had been working hard on his daily workouts to acclimatize to his new arm, and Colin felt that he had recently become obsessed with working out for long periods of time and warned him that he would tell Noah if he overdid it. Clark is furious and threatens to tell Selena about his multiple affairs. Colin immediately backs off and tells him it was just a joke. Moran joins them and envies them for having fun under the current circumstances. Then he told them that he wanted to consult them about something important and said that there was a task he wanted to assign them. Claw was furious and decided to use his power to eliminate him, while on the other side, Reiner and Shine were chasing each other like Tom and Jerry inside the office. Reiner refused to work even one more minute, and when they ended up falling over Ferris' pie tins, she beat the crap out of them until Reiner took the opportunity to run out of the mansion and go to the motel to take a break, but he ran into Milk on the way. He expressed his displeasure that Shine was thinking too seriously and that he should relax and celebrate his birthday instead. When he mentioned it, he realized that he had missed her birthday and apologized for it. She was confused and told him that a lot of things had happened, and she wasn't in a position to have a party in the first place. Then suddenly, she decides to leave before it's too late and tells him that if he lets Ferris cheat on him again, she won't forgive him. He panics when he sees Luke and Lear behind him, crying about how nice their leader is to scum like him. He was furious and told Luke that he was the one responsible for it in the first place. He told him that's why they were thinking of ways to atone for it. Moran managed to convince Claw and Colin that they had to make sure Shine's birthday wasn't as boring as last year's. They decided to help him by lending him their powers and then left to start a meeting about new ideas for the celebration. They met with Noah and Aslina, and Colin thought of building a theater in the public square of the palace. Then they asked Noah how they celebrate birthdays in Istanbul, and she told them that they usually set off a lot of fireworks, and Aslina got excited and wanted to see fireworks at least once. Clock decided to fulfill her request and add fireworks to their plans, but No told them that it would take 6 months to prepare the fireworks and they would not be able to finish by Shine's birthday, but Claw insisted on implementing the idea of fireworks and told them that he knew the right person to handle it. On the other hand, Ferris was eating pancakes at a convenience store with Reiner, who was lying on the floor because he wanted to sleep so badly that he couldn't sit up like her. So she accused him of having already had an assassination attempt on his life for seducing 2 women and trying to rob one of them. She told him to forget all his troubles and concentrate on enjoying the moment of eating the pancakes, and he told her that it was thanks to her that he was forced to eat pancakes from all over the empire. Then he noticed that the pancakes in this store tasted different from the usual ones in other stores. The owner of the store joined them to express her happiness that he liked the pancakes, but Ferris soon felt embarrassed when she told him that she had made them after inventing a special recipe for them, and then he was surprised that she was dreaming of opening the store. Realizing that she dreams of opening her own pie shop one day and realizing that she's serious about her favorite food, she tells him that those who don't fight for pies will get their comeuppance. They were interrupted when Claw and Colin joined them, and Reiner was surprised that they had come to give him a special assignment. They didn't wait for his response and dragged him out of the store. Ferris didn't care. She thought he had done something terrible, and it was time for him to go to jail. A few days later, Shine was in his carriage and ordered the driver to drive as fast as possible as if he was being chased, when he was surprised by a thunderous attack that caused the carriage to crash, and it turned out to be Reiner himself who ordered him to surrender. Then he dragged him out of the carriage and kept complaining about the hard work that Claw put him through day and night because of his stupid plan, so he decided not to let him escape and enjoy his life away. Then he was surprised by the appearance of Ferris and the others and found that they intended to take him back to the palace for some reason. After Shine returned to the palace, he was surprised that all the people of Roland were waiting for him to celebrate his birthday. Claw asked him to light the fireworks that they had prepared for him and asked him to use his power against the faint light that appeared in front of him. When he did so, he was surprised that the fireworks decorated the sky in celebration of him, and everyone stood looking at the scene in front of them, feeling joyful. Then Milk was surprised that her friends decided to celebrate her birthday at the same time as the king and set off fireworks for her, and Ferris gave her her birthday cake and remained happy all the time. Then Shine suddenly left the party and went to the stable and told the worker to prepare the carriage for him without the driver. In the meantime, it started to rain heavily, so Reiner, who was in charge of shooting fireworks, had to return to the palace and found Shine standing in the carriage waiting for him. On their way back, Shine thanked him for going to the trouble of setting off the fireworks for him, then told him that he wanted to stop somewhere for a while, and after a while Reiner found that he had taken them to the place where they used to sit during the Royal Academy. He thanked him again for everything he'd done for him today. Reiner was flattered and thought he should be nice once in a while. He decided to get some sleep after the effort, but Shine told him there was still work to be done. When Reiner expressed his exasperation with the hard work, he decided to let him get some rest and told him that he would come to wake him up in 3 hours from now. Reiner felt angry and told him that 3 hours was not enough for him, and they continued to negotiate the duration. Shine said that this is the price of his dream to change the country for the better and that he still has a lot to do, and Reiner resigned himself to the idea that he is a workaholic without compassion. Then it occurred to him to apologize for that day when he decided to leave. He told him that he thought all his words were empty dreams and vowed to become king of Roland after him and change it for the better like him, and he admitted that Shine had already achieved part of his goal and changed the empire to a much better situation than before. Shine tells him that this is indeed a hollow dream, as many friends have died for this goal. Reiner replies that the empire would have remained in darkness forever without him and asks him not to work as a punishment. As Shine listened to his advice, he felt regret for what he had to do and told him that although he felt that the empire had changed for the better, it was still just a hollow dream for him, and they ended up fighting on a rainy night, surrounded by many taboo breakers. Once upon a time, after the legendary hero defeated a large number of villains, the gods appeared and sealed the hero away in the far south in order to protect the world after the darkness engulfed it. And while the hero was suspended in the sky, he saw the only demon that looked like Reiner staring at him. The lonely demon agreed to lend him his power as his first friend, and the demon became the solution to all the formulas after it split in half and freed the hero. Then the hero returned and annihilated all his opponents until he was standing on a mountain of corpses, until he collapsed and caused the world to collapse with him and began begging for help, wanting to destroy the entire world. And the lonely demon told him to use the other half of his body to give him the darkness inside him before his body faded away, and he did not regret his decision. In the meantime, Claff and Colin were concerned when Shine was late returning to the palace. Colin said he knew why they had been summoned here today, while Reiner and Shine were on their battlefield, and Reiner wondered if he was using the rain to hide his crying. Then he realized that he intended to kill him after he saw Shine draw his sword in preparation for the fight, and told him that he knew all along that it would end this way because nothing good lasts for him, so he apologized to him for having to do it. But Reiner did not mind dying at the hands of his friend, but he told him that he had already made a promise with Ferris that she would get rid of him. Shin was frustrated that he would not have the honor of causing his death and that he had broken a previous promise between them. Reiner told him that he still saw him as a friend despite that, but that did not change Shin's desire to get rid of him and put an end to the matter. Reiner was then surprised by the appearance of the test subjects around him, and soon he was surrounded from all directions. Then Shine ordered them to attack him all at once, so he began to dodge their attacks and try to hit them with his abilities, but he discovered that they can regenerate and heal their injuries. Then he realized that they were Shine's creation. He couldn't believe it at first, but he told him that he chose to experiment on humans only because it was necessary, so he blamed him for carrying all the burdens on his shoulders alone and considering all those close to him as strangers. When the victims of the experiments resumed their attacks, he continued to fend them off and try to take them down one by one until one of them managed to get close to him and touch him, getting him painful burns. And as he suffered, he told Cheyenne that he would not give up and would not abandon him even if he fell to the bottom of the darkness. Shen had no answer other than that he was still determined to get rid of him here and now, even though Reiner tried to convince him to join him and stop fighting each other. And when he noticed tears welling up in his eyes, he vowed that he would not die by his own hands here and would save him. When Reiner used his alpha powers, Cheyenne rushed towards him to attack him himself and started fighting directly between them, and they continued to use their powers until they created a large gap between each other. Then Cheyenne took advantage of his lax defenses and planted several magical blades in his body, then told him that thanks to him, he was able to break free from the sword. He then told him that it was time to devour him completely and send him to eternal hell, but he felt something against Reiner pushing him away. Then his mother appeared out of his body and ordered him to stop what he was about to do. Lucille appears and admires Cheyenne's ability to survive to this point. When she asks him to stop Shen and release Reiner, he refuses and tells her that Cheyenne needs to eat something. She tells him that Cheyenne is in a difficult situation and in this state, he will not be able to change the world. Lucille felt that she was right, and when she expressed her happiness with his sanity, he told her that the thing about Cheyenne is that he never loses his sanity, which is why he chose him, as he always chooses the right path. Then he addressed Reiner and told him that Cheyenne would betray him. Then he approached him and touched his head and told him to fall asleep as he likes to do all the time. And as soon as he touched him, Reiner immediately lost consciousness. Then Cheyenne walks in and finds himself sleeping at his desk, and Reiner wakes him up and scolds him for pushing him to work hard while he sleeps comfortably. Cheyenne is surprised to learn that he's been asleep for 4 hours and realizes that what he just saw was just a horrible dream. Reiner thought he had done well to wake him up in time and told him that he hesitated at first because he looked like he had a lot of hot girls in his dreams. Cheyenne felt embarrassed and told him that they had to continue working quickly, but he was surprised when Reiner told him that he had finished everything. Shen was amazed that he was able to do all the work and reports by himself, so he thanked him for his help and then realized that the reason Reiner was urging him to go to bed was because he wanted to get some rest too. Suddenly, he came back to reality again and found himself gripping Reiner and unable to take his life despite his belief that it is right to die so that he does not suffer an eternal hell. But in the end, he could not put his blade in his neck and admitted defeat in front of the original Cyan. He told him that there was no winner in their psychological battle because they both belonged to the same person. Cheyenne then realized that he was too weak in every way and felt ashamed that he had been able to get ahead by betraying his friends. The voice inside him told him not to blame himself for everything since he didn't do anything wrong in the first place, but Cheyenne's shame and sadness grew until he decided to let the person inside him possess him and told him that he would give him his heart. He promised to take care of everything from now on and not make him suffer anymore, and then he decided to leave, leaving Reiner behind. After some time, Reiner regained consciousness and found himself in a room with dim light, and when he saw the spider's house in the corner, he realized that he was back in prison again and that his friend was still living in this cell, and he wondered that Cheyenne had finally given up the idea of getting rid of him. He then thought to ask the prison guard about Cheyenne, but when no one answered, he decided to escape and make sure to make Shen regret keeping him alive. Before he could use his spell, he was surprised by a loud explosion behind him and found that Ferris had broken into the cell to get him out. She rushed to him and hugged him tightly, thinking that he was already dead according to what Cheyenne had told her, and kept looking for him until she finally found him. Then she added that he had been acting strangely lately as he was smiling while telling her that he had gotten rid of him, a smile mixed with tears. Reiner was surprised when she told him that he had led the Imperial Army to Nilva, formed a group of soldiers with forbidden magic inside them, and was spilling blood all over Nilva, while Roland's people cheered him on and felt proud of what he was doing. Cheyenne, on the other hand, has lost his mind and is beating the crap out of everyone in his path, while Reiner escapes from prison and decides to find a way to stop Shen. After crossing the bridge with Ferris, he was surprised when it exploded, and it turned out that Kiefer blew it up to stop the guards from following them. Then they got into a carriage and headed towards Nilva. In the meantime, everyone was fighting for a better future, and while the Roland Empire had the advantage in the war, Rival decided to seize the opportunity and make a surprise breakthrough to attack Roland's army, while Tyr and the Alpha Bearers were waiting for the right moment to kill them. Reiner, on the other hand, decided to keep moving forward and seek as much power as he could to stop Cheyenne, vowing that he would one day repay him and force him to admit that he had the best friend ever.